It's been 1 week since Lancashire dog walker Nicola Bulley disappeared.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of February, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Angela. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the family of missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, have said their lives have been emptied after the 45-year-old mortgage advisor went missing in St Michael's on Wyre last Friday.
It comes after Lancashire police released a CCTV image of potential witness yesterday. Nicola's sister, Louise, has urged anyone with information to come forward.
Now, from whether the Prime Minister can tackle the sleaze in Westminster to your opinion on strikes and Boris Johnson's possible return to frontline politics, we'll deliver the result of our GB News People's Poll.
More train strike misery this morning as drivers walk out for a second time this week. We're going to be live from stations across the country as operators say that the industrial action could have a knock-on effect this weekend.
And he's the bad boy of punk making a return to the stage. The Sex Pistol Johnny Rotten makes a bid for Eurovision Song Contest glory. We'll have all the details ahead of the upcoming contest in Liverpool in May.
Well, as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us. We're at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, today marks 1 week since mother of two, Nicola Bulley, first went missing whilst walking her dog alongside the River Wyre in Lancashire last Friday morning after dropping her two daughters at the local primary school.
Now, Nicola's family are desperately searching for answers as the police search continues, with her two daughters, aged 6 and 9, desperate for their mummy to come back.
Well, with police formally publishing a timeline of Nicola's last known movements, of course, lots of questions still to be answered. It does seem, doesn't it, Angela, to be a complete mystery at the moment.
I think the front page of the Daily Mail has it really saying people don't just disappear, don't simply vanish into thin air, which, of course, they don't. And it has. And I also see the papers this morning are saying that many women in the area are particularly concerned because they feel that perhaps this area now needs to be policed a bit more because it's a bit remote, and they are very concerned if indeed she has vanished because she has been kidnapped in some way. Are other people at risk?
Well, that is a concern. Well, let's see if we can talk to the editor of the Lancashire Post and Blackpool Gazette, Nicola Adam, who joins us now. Nicola, good morning to you. Look, as we were saying, it's still a complete mystery. I mean, what do we know at this stage?
Well, police are very much at pains to say that they're not looking for any third-party involvement, and they have reiterated this yesterday. They've not made anybody aware of any particular evidence that has led them down that road. And certainly the family interviews seem to be that she's just has vanished, and they've absolutely no idea. But they are very much still treating this as a missing person inquiry at the moment.
Not looking for a third party. That suggests that they've ruled out the possibility of her being snatched.
That seems to be the case, and they have said that right from the start. And at first we thought perhaps they were just trying to prevent a panic in the local area. But it does look like they have ruled that out, and they obviously must have some reason. We have no idea what that is. Yesterday they were back at the banks of the river. Once again, this time they've taped the whole area off, which they actually hadn't done earlier. And they've had the divers back in the river with the underwater drones and that sort of thing. And they've had all the specialist searchers back again. And they've been combing the area and the riverbanks in the area. So, you know, that leads you to believe they do think there's been an accident, though apparently there's no real evidence to say that. But it's been very wet. The weather's been very inclement. It would be very difficult, I think, to be able to tell. So, yeah, it just seems to be at the moment. They certainly, yesterday afternoon, they issued a CCTV image of a dog walker who they wanted to talk to, a second witness, and they have identified and spoken to that person. But as of this morning, there doesn't appear to be any sign of Nicola or any new information.
Extraordinary that the dog was still there, the phone was still on a Zoom call, still connected to a Zoom call. I mean, the implication from police, as you say, a missing persons inquiry. at the moment, but that in itself doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't, and certainly the residents of the local area are feeling very frustrated. You can imagine we're trying to veer away from speculation, but certainly, obviously, if you're a local resident in the area, and let's be honest, Nicola, I mean, I actually only live not very far away from this area. It's a beautiful area. It's surrounded by a number of, relatively affluent communities. It's a really popular spot for going for a walk, for a dog walk, or for just a walk in general. And it could be any of us, and I think that's why this is resonated with so many people.
Looking at a number of newspapers that have given us a timeline for what happened on that morning, and there seems to be a missing 20 minutes, isn't there, between 9:10 and about 9:30, when someone actually discovered her telephone on the side. And in that 20 minutes, anything could have happened to her, couldn't it? How are the police actually working through the possibilities at the moment?
That seems to be, I think, what they were up to yesterday, trying to get to grips with the actual timeline, because they're not 100% sure on that gap, as you say. They know that she dropped her young girls off at school, and then she went to this area to walk the dog, and then in that period she logged on to the Microsoft Teams call. She had a phone call with her boss, and she logged on to the Microsoft Teams call, which then at some point after that she put the phone down, remained on the Teams call, did not log out. Took the dog off the lead, and just vanished. So they're trying to ascertain exactly those timings, which is why they were issuing the CCTV appeal yesterday and seeing if any of the local dog walkers, because it's quite a busy area, there are quite a few people, certainly in the morning, out walking their dogs out at that time. So they're really hoping that the continued coverage of what's happening will jog somebody's memory, because it could just take one person's memory. Little thing they didn't even realise was important could lead to finding her.
Well, look, let's keep our fingers crossed. Nicola, Adam, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now we can bring you the latest results of the GBNews People's Poll. We're tackling sleaze, and that is indeed the big issue, isn't it, in the poll that we're looking at? Yes,
it would seem to be. 1% of voters, just 1%, are completely confident in Rishi Sunak to tackle sleaze in British politics. 55% are not confident at all that he will.
While on the issue of teachers' strikes, 48% say they support the strikes and 28% oppose them. But it's important to say that 24% don't know or just preferred not to answer.
Well, all this makes pretty grim reading for the Conservatives, who find themselves 24 points behind Labour in the national polls. Well, to help us take us through this and the other big political stories of the day is the former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Morning, Charlie. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. You've had a chance to look at these results. What do you make of them?
Well, thank you very much.
Not at all.
It's only on a Friday morning.
It's only 6:10 in the morning.
On a Friday morning. Thank you very much.
You've been reading them, so you must have an opinion on what they mean for Rishi Sunak and for the party. Well, I mean, it would have ruined it's going to ruin, I'm sure, the Prime Minister's weekend, isn't it? Reading this.
It's not happy reading. You're absolutely you're absolutely right, and it's fair to say. But I think, look, when it comes to the issue of sleaze in politics, it's very, very difficult time. I think there is a political hangover that we have in this country that dates back all the way to 2016. And so anything that is remotely political, or if there's a scandal or anything like that, of course it affects people, I think, more heavily than what it might usually. But I think what the Prime Minister has to demonstrate, what he did in the case of Nadine Zahawi, is having proper and thorough investigations into issues that arise and acting on them swiftly. Now, the Prime Minister will say that he appointed an ethics advisor. That ethics advisor interviewed Nadine Zahawi and took all of the issues in that case and reported to the Prime Minister at 7 a.m, and he acted on it 2 hours later.
I mean, the issue is, though, with someone like Nadeem Zahawi, it's part of the problem that we talk about sleaze here. Now, Nadeem Zahawi, legally, didn't do anything wrong. He was late in paying taxes and therefore was fine. That happens to hundreds of thousands of people every year. right? And it was a large amount. But he was sacked because he broke the ministerial code by not revealing he was under investigation. But it's still classed as sleaze within all of this.
I think that's totally right. And I think that's part of the hangover of so much politics that's taken place since 2016. And you think, we had a very, very divisive referendum. There was division throughout the country. We had a general election a year later in 2017, another election in 2019, and 2 years of COVID, where the government and state intervention was really front and centre of all of our lives, intervening in ways in which it never would normally. And so I think there has been a lot of politics in this country. And of course, last year, everybody knows sort of what happened under Boris and, the 49 days under Liz Truss. So, there's been a lot of politics and there's been a lot of issues, and therefore anything that goes wrong or any slight issue, I think, plays on people's minds more than what it would normally. So it's not good reading, but I think the Prime Minister has to demonstrate that whenever there is an issue, I should say, that he will act on it professionally and swiftly, but get on with dealing with the issues of the day, growing the economy, dealing with the small boats crisis, and fixing the problems in the NHS.
But he doesn't seem to be able to get that message across, does he? He is doing it properly, if you like, by, as you say, appointing a special advisor. What is he going to have to do to get on? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a poll in which a Prime Minister has had 1% of the people that were interviewed who said, "You've got it wrong, mate." So what's he going to do to turn it round?
Well, I think that's interesting. I think what's also interesting is the number of people that are in the don't know category, or who are unsure whether there should be strikes or whether the Prime Minister should be in office or elected again. And I think it is that wave of unknowns that actually you can't forget, because you would have thought if it was all in Labour's favour, then they would be absolutely streets ahead. But it is that don't know category that I think means that it's still all to play for, and that there is still hope that Rishi Sunak can turn it around and win those people over.
How is he going to do it?
Oh, I think it's on delivery. And I think it's sticking to the 5 pledges that he set out in the new year. So it is about getting inflation down, because that is the number one issue that is going to help with the cost of living. And we'll also deal with the issues of why people are on strike. Obviously there is a huge issue around public sector pay and conditions. But the only way to ensure that everybody, whether in the public sector, if you're private sector or self-employed, getting inflation down is going to be the number one issue to help get through the cost of living crisis. So tackling inflation, lowering debt, growing the economy, and, as I say, tackling the issues that we have with the backlog in the NHS and stopping the small boats crisis. I think those were the issues that he set out in the start of the new year. If he can get on top of that and we see progress in those areas, then I think people will start to give him a second look.
But you said right at the beginning, the important thing here is the Prime Minister is seen to, instigate investigations, and then when they deliver, acting swiftly on them. Well, nothing swift about Dominic Raab, is it? Now, whether the man has done anything wrong or not in terms of bullying, we just don't know. But this has been going on for months.
It has, and I think that's absolutely right. I think it would do well for the Conservative Party and for the Prime Minister to get this case closed as soon as possible. But again, he's followed due process. He's appointed a top casey, Adam Tolley, who is looking into this. And as I say, I hope that can be concluded as quickly as possible for the Prime Minister's sake, so that can be a case closed and he can move on to getting on with that delivery. And as I say, starting to win people back over.
Do you think the don't knows are possibly because they don't understand the process through which he is going, which, in fact, he has to follow, doesn't he? Because that's what Parliament expects, that it is investigated properly, even though it's taking a long time.
I think so, and I think that the conclusion of that report will be absolutely clear, and it just gives the Prime Minister the ability to say, and the leeway to say, look, this is being investigated thoroughly, these are the conclusions, and these are the actions that I'm taking, and people will judge him on the actions that he takes.
OK.
Thanks, Charlie.
You will see we'll see you next hour, actually, won't we?
Yeah.
You will.
Good, look forward to that. It is 14 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of the stories today.
British Gas is under pressure as it faces criticism to compensate vulnerable customers following reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing the prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. Ofgem has called for action, not warm words. The regulator announced yesterday that it was launching an investigation into the matter and have asked suppliers to review the use of court warrants to enter customers' homes.
New figures show the number of people in the UK diagnosed with cancer will rise by a third by 2040. Analysis from Cancer Research finds that if current trends continue, Cancer cases will rise from 384,000 cases a year to 506,000 in 2040.
The average price for motor insurance has increased by 8% towards the end of last year. Association of British Insurers says the typical premium of £470 was up 7% in the last 3 months of 2021. The trade body says it's due to the rise in the cost of paint and the jump in energy prices.
Who knew paint was that expensive?
That was our reaction. What, the rise in paint? Well, no, clearly it is.
I don't know. That's very odd, isn't it? Oh, talking about the cost of things, Angela.
Yes.
Have you seen this? It's in the Telegraph this morning, written by, dare I say, no one's got a byline on this, because it's a ridiculously posh article.
Oh.
About hand soaps in the downstairs loo.
Right.
Now, do you go for cheap and cheerful or posh?
I decant it and I buy it from the supermarket. It works perfectly well.
Yes, exactly. Well, you see now here, now Zach in the studio, one of our producers, I see he's from Liverpool.
Yes, right.
And he's
Does that make a difference?
Yes, I think it
right.
does, because of common sense, you see.
Yes.
So he's like me from the northwest.
From Carrick.
And
Yes,
he
that
goes
one.
Carex,
Yeah.
you see. Now I have that upstairs and downstairs, and so does Zach apparently.
Yeah.
But a lot of people apparently going for this Aesop, which is £31
What?
a bottle, or Santa Maria Novella, which is £50 for 250 millilitres.
Flipping heck.
Can you imagine, rather than £1.80?
Oh,
for
no,
a
that's
bottle of
silly.
Carex?
I mean, that's just showing off, isn't it? Yes.
What about bar soap? Do you use bar soap
Do you know,
anymore?
I can't remember the last time I used a bar of soap.
Right.
I tend to use the liquid stuff because, you know, bars of soap, they do go all sort of mushy in the soap tray, don't they?
I have bars of soap in the bath upstairs.
Do you have imperial leather, darling?
I don't, no. Well, I have had in the past, or a bit of Pears, or at the minute I'm buying Dove.
Oh, yes, good for your skin.
Just because it was, you know, it's on special offer. But according to this,
What?
if you have a Dove bar, then you are over 70 and a Grazia reader. Well, I'm neither.
Well, that's nonsense.
Nonsense,
Oh,
isn't
no,
it?
but I think probably it's very wise for them not to have given a byline to whoever wrote it, because there's a load of old tosh in that article.
It's a load of tosh. It's very, very posh. And also, I think, what about people who don't have a downstairs toilet?
I live in a flat, so I haven't got a downstairs toilet. It's all on the same level. But, no, I like to put it in a nice-looking pot with a pump on the top, which means you can put anything you like in there, and as long as it washes your hands, isn't that the important thing?
Well, that is it, exactly.
Exactly.
Tell your guests what you're like.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very expensive. Anyway, let us know if you've got a view of that. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, let's tell you about train passengers. Oh dear, facing another day of chaos as drivers strike for the second time this week. Most services across England are being cancelled.
Drivers working under ASLEF and the RMT unions are walking out over an unsettled dispute concerning pay, job security and working practices. And operators say strike action may also affect services on Saturday. So is there any end in sight?
Oh, it doesn't look like, does it? Let's find out from our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's at Euston Station. Paul, obviously very early, but, I mean, there'd still be some commuters normally this time of day. What's happening there this morning?
Not a lot, to be honest. In fact, there are no trains that are running from Euston today. 80% of trains in Great Britain won't be running today, most of them in England, but there is, of course, a knock-on effect for services that then run on into Scotland and Wales, Northern Ireland, not affected. And you were asking, look, is there any end in sight to this dispute? The answer is, when it comes to ASLEF, who represent the vast majority of train drivers who are going on strike today, the answer is, at the moment, no, because they are really unhappy. Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of ASLEF, really unhappy with the current deal that's on the offer of 4% backdated pay to last year, 4% for this year. He says that they're still offering a real terms pay cut and there are unacceptable conditions attached. So this dispute ongoing. It is now the 8th day of industrial action by ASLEF. One would have thought its members could afford to take further industrial action, given they're on 60,000 average earnings are around £60,000 a year, and according to the Rail Delivery Group, who've made this pay offer, that will go up to around about 65,000. But the dispute continues with ASLEF, who are pretty angry. The RMT, on the other hand, the pay deal that's on the table for them, that's still being considered by the RMT. I spoke to Mick Lynch on Sunday. He said that probably sometime next week, at the moment they're consulting members, but next week they'll come back to the government, back to the rail employers, and give them their answer on whether that deal is acceptable or not. So there could be a resolution, potentially a settlement on that dispute next week. But when it comes to ASLEF and the train drivers, they're not happy. And again, as we're seeing, rail services really badly hit today. And of course, there's a knock-on effect for the wider economy, billions of pounds lost, not least with the hospitality industry, but also the rail sector, which simply cannot afford it in terms of economic damage and also reputational damage.
Thanks very much indeed. Stay warm, because you look as if you need to bundle up. It is a bit chilly this morning, isn't it? Well, we've got Simon Calder, travel correspondent of The Independent, who's with us in the studio right now. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, this is just getting worse and worse. But Paul was saying there may be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. What do you think, Simon?
Well, I agree with Paul that in terms of the RMT dispute, and you've got to bear in mind there are actually three tangled disputes here. The one today is the train drivers against the train operators, who are effectively controlled by the government. And that is a million miles from settlement. I was talking to Mick Whelan, the General Secretary. He just said, we're not interested at the moment. You know, this is absolutely nothing that we need. As this 4% plus 4%, subject to all sorts of strings. We just want a good no strings pay deal. So that's a million miles away. However, talking to people very close to the disputes between the RMT, the much bigger union, and the train operators, and also the RMT and Network Rail, they are moving closer. And the fact that we haven't seen the RMT effectively throwing out the deal that's been offered immediately leads me to think that actually RMT staff, some of whom have been on strike for 20 days in the past 8 months, are going to say, come on, we're exhausted, it's cost us £2,000, we're frankly not going to make up that money, so let's just settle. Whereas the train drivers, and as it's clear today, as Paul was saying, they can take out the vast majority of trains in England, and that can continue really as long as they like, because even though they lose more money, proportionately, because they earn more money, they are more able to withstand that. So a messy old situation. And of course, it's the passengers and it's the country which are suffering.
See, we don't know the details, but this figure of 8% over 2 years has actually been floating about for months and months and months. It's unlikely that's going to change significantly. So is this now all about conditions?
Yes, and so the government has said the only way we can possibly get the books to balance, and actually they're never going to do that anyway on the railway, is to get more productivity out of you people. So therefore, we'll give you more money. It's going to be a long way short of inflation, but you're only going to get that if you agree to all these changes, some of which go back to Victorian times. And the rail industry, the unions have always traditionally made changes, but only in exchange for extracting another few percentage. So the sorts of changes that are being asked for, normally they would be saying, well, we'll have 2% for that and a 1% for that, and then we'll do it. Now they're being told, nope, you're only going to get a pay rise at all if you agree to them. They are furious, and they clearly have a lot of industrial power. However, of course, we're not back in the 1980s, which is the last time we saw anything like this. I know you're way too young to remember that, but in those days, the whole country kind of shut down and the government really was forced to come to the table. These days, lots of people working from home, other people just saying, well, I'm going to drive, or I'm not going to bother with that holiday or that trip to London or whatever. The country loses, but so do the rail workers.
Simon, none of this is yet, as I understand it, being put to the membership. When they say we are not prepared to accept that, it's the union leaders who are saying that, presumably by talking to their members. But are we going to have a national ballot? And if so, how do you think that will go?
Right, there will be a referendum. We have actually already had one, although it was difficult to spot because there was so much else going on. But there was an offer from Network Rail that the RMT put to their members with a recommendation to reject. So they said, we think this is rubbish, but do have a vote on it anyway. And they did reject it, although by that only 52%. Remind you of anything?
Right. Yes, it does.
Voted in favour of rejecting it.
Yeah, I recognise those figures.
And so the idea is that if Network Rail, if the train operators can get the RMT to put the pay deal to members without saying we think it's rubbish, then we might get a settlement. So I think those sides, the RMT is certainly moving closer, and we've seen the other rail unions, Transport Salaried Staff Association, basically looking at the deal and thinking, well, frankly, we think that's the best we're going to get, so let's move on.
Just very briefly, is it worth even trying to get a train before Monday?
Millions of trains, yeah. I mean, there are loads of trains running. If you're on the East Coast Main Line, there's a pretty good service. Great Western Railway from here in London, Paddington. You can get to Bristol every hour, and lots of little branch lines running. South Western Railways, almost all of their trains running, except on the Isle of Wight. C2C, South Essex. You can get to Stansted Airport, you can't get to Gatwick Airport, and you can get to Heathrow Airport, can't get to Manchester Airport. But yes, always check. But there will be trains, even on some lines where there are strikes, running up till about 9 o'clock tonight. Just make sure you can get to your destination in time.
Simon, as always, joy to see you. Thank you very much.
And you have no problem because he goes everywhere on his bicycle. Simon, thanks.
OK, much more to come for you, including how the latest rise in interest rates could affect your mortgage.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday's looking dry for the majority, pretty mild out there this morning as well. Not a huge amount of sunshine, most places staying fairly drab. High pressure is in control, certainly across the south. We've got low pressure and these weather fronts linking back, which are bringing a lot of cloud and in places damp starts, light rain and drizzle, clearing from Northern Ireland, but still affecting parts of northwest England. And it will be another fairly damp morning for western Scotland. The rain won't be as heavy as yesterday, and it will push away to the north, so much of the west coast will become dry through the afternoon. Northwest England should also slowly turn a bit drier. Some brighter skies for Wales and southwest England. Could see some sunny spells further east as well. And it is mild temperatures this afternoon, getting up to maybe 13, perhaps 14 Celsius, where we see some sunshine. Even where it's damp in northern Scotland, temperatures are above average. The rain will continue to trickle across the Northern Isles through Friday evening. There'll be a bit of drizzle here and there around western coasts and hills, but for most places it's a dry night. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud, a few clearer spells, which may allow temperatures to drop down to 4 or 5 Celsius, but certainly for most towns and cities we'll see the temperatures holding up at 6 or 7. So a mild start to the weekend, and for most it'll be a dry day on Saturday, certainly for England and Wales. Some drizzle around the coast and hills of Wales, and we will see some rain heading into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Initially into the northwest. By lunchtime that'll be spreading across Northern Ireland and then through central and southern Scotland during Saturday afternoon. It won't rain all day, it will move through. Western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland likely to turn a bit brighter through the afternoon. For most of England and Wales, much of the day will be dry and again mild, double figures almost across the board. But look at Sunday's temperatures, single figures. It will be turning cooler, but as well as that, we'll have light winds on Sunday and plenty of sunshine.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations. for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 6:30 and still to come here on today's programme. As commuters across the country continue to battle the rail strikes today, we'll be live with our reporters to discover how they're likely to affect you.
And from punk singer to Eurovision star, we'll have the latest on John Lydon's bid for glory ahead of the singing competition in May. He wants to represent Ireland.
Yeah. Get in touch in all the usual ways. Email us to gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, let's talk money, should we? Because the Bank of England has raised the interest rate again to 4% in total. It's the 10th increase in a row in what is going to be a blow if you've got a mortgage.
As interest rates continue to climb, there's an increasing number of private landlords leaving the rental market, claiming that they simply can't afford their mortgages.
Well, let's talk to property expert Christina Castellina, who's in Liverpool. Get her insight. Christina, really good to see you this morning. And I guess one of the main concerns, if you've got a mortgage and that interest rate is going up, that is a concern. Not much we can do about it at the moment. But what about those who are trying to get on the property ladder and knowing what they should do, in terms of locking into a fixed deal for a period of time?
Yeah, this is a question I get asked all the time, and it's so difficult because I wish I had a crystal ball to say, right, guys, this is it. This time next year, we'll be on the way down. So I think really for people now that are looking to get on the property market, to get onto the property ladder, I would say be wise, be smart, and don't overextend yourself. I think because we've been spoiled with having such low interest rates, people really have been able to stretch because their interest rates have been so tiny. Now that they've come onto a variable, their mortgage cost is just gone through the roof, incomparable to what they used to pay. So I think now for people, just starting from scratch, don't overextend yourself. Make sure that you can budget correctly. And if you do want that certainty, then, even though you may be fixing at a higher rate than potentially you need to, at least you can budget for that. If you feel quite comfortable, potentially being on a variable, knowing that your rate may go up by another 0.5%, but in a year's time, then you will get the benefit maybe of it coming down over time. It's looking much right for you ultimately.
Several of the banks today are saying that they actually think that house prices, not just here in Britain but across Europe, are actually dropping. Presumably that is going to be a help for a lot of people, isn't it? That the outlay initially is not going to be as great.
Well, this is it. There's always a pro and a con to everything. Zoopla have been saying it's only going to be 3 to 5%. So I don't think we're going to go back to 2008. I don't think we're going to go, it's not going to be as severe as that. However, there's going to be more opportunity, certainly, that we've seen in the last few years. In the last few years, property prices have just been soaring, but it's not even about the price, it's the competition. So I think it's been really difficult for people, myself included, trying to move home. You view a property, there's 10 other people there at the same viewing, and the next day the agent's saying, right, best and final, you only get to see the property once, and you've got to again extend yourself. So I think it will bring some opportunity for people to actually make a decision in their own time if the market does slow and it does start to come down a little bit.
I mean, we are at a point, aren't we, where there just aren't that many products on the market when you're looking at buying a mortgage. Do you think if we hit a point in summer this year where we see a peak in interest rates, and if things start to fall after that, are we likely to see banks providing more products for us to choose from?
Yeah, and it's really interesting actually, because the interest rate's gone up, but actually because the mortgage sector has slowed, banks are being more competitive already, even though interest rates have gone up. With the Bank of England, banks themselves are now offering incentives. It was only a few days ago, I've heard that some lenders are actually offering £1,000 cash back on completion of the mortgage to try and win business. So that again is a great sign. I think really lenders need to be responsible, and they need to do their part in, maybe lowering their gains a little bit, because after the mini budget, I mean, the banks they really did fly those rates up. And I think now we have more certainty, and I don't think they need to be making the margins that potentially they have been making.
OK. Christina, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is. And of course, if if you've got more people dropping out of the rental market, that's a double whammy for people who can't afford the down payment on a house to buy their own. They've got to rent. So they're being squeezed. They're between a rock and a hard place at the moment. So many young people, aren't they?
If you're affected by that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've been going through with your estate agent and mortgage lender and all the rest of it. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere, though, because coming up, we've got all the news and views making the headlines in the papers today with Leo Kearse and Emma Burnell.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very warm welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela.
Well, time to have a look at the newspapers for you this morning. We'll start with The Times. It has its investigation into British Gas, who, through an intermediary, it's worth saying, broke into vulnerable people's homes to fit prepayment meters.
Mm-hmm. The Guardian leads with Shell's profits announcement, which the TUC union has called obscene.
The Express reports the Bank of England's forecast on the UK economy is looking optimistic.
And the Daily Mail leads with the disappearance of Nicola Bulley in Lancashire 1 week on.
OK, let's go through some of those papers then with the journalist and playwright Emma Burnell and the comedian Leo Kearse. Good to see you both this morning.
Hello.
Let's start with the Times, Emma. Should we be looking at these forcing of prepayment meters into vulnerable people's homes?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a disgraceful story, every part of it. I mean, prepayment meters are really bad in and of themselves because they're the most expensive way forced on the poorest people.
Yes.
But to do it in such a manner, it just shows such a lack of compassion and understanding of the human dignity of these people. We're talking about very vulnerable people. In the story there, we're talking about a woman with a disabled daughter who needs a hoist. Imagine that hoist will use electricity and that, you know, all of a sudden you're halfway through and your meter goes off. I mean, that's just, you should not be forcing this on people. And to break into their homes, you know, that is just fundamentally wrong. To break into someone's...
I mean, to be fair, they had a warrant to do it.
That in itself should be very, very questionable.
Well,
because, you know, a warrant to break into someone's home should be something that is a last resort, not something we're doing because somebody's fallen a bit behind on their bills, which at the moment, who blooming isn't?
Do we blame British Gas for this or this other company which they were using?
Well, British Gas say they weren't aware that actually people were doing this, don't they?
Well, if British Gas are employing this company and have paid them, they should be aware of what people are doing on their behalf, frankly.
Well, at least they have stopped now. They've said you can't do it anymore. But I agree, it is ironic that the most vulnerable people in society who have the least money are the ones who are having to pay most because of that system for their energy.
But, I mean, we talk about this being a warrant should be a last resort. I'm pretty sure it was a last resort. I'm pretty sure they were sent some bills that they didn't pay, and then this was the last resort because they didn't pay those bills. And it's, you know, although, I mean, it's terrible that people have their houses broken into to fit these prepayment meters. I've been on one. I thought it was great. You never got a bill. Just keep shoving those 50 pences in, never get a bill. But somebody's going to have to pay these bills, and if it's not the people who are being sent the bills, then everybody else's bills are going to go up to cover it.
That's a fair point.
I mean, we are talking about companies that are making enormous amounts of profits at the moment, but also, they need to pay the money off over time. Nobody is saying that they shouldn't have to pay the bill. I'm against the forcing of prepayment meters. Prepayment meters are generally a really bad option because they are very expensive.
But we need to get to the point, don't we, where this would be less of an issue still an issue, but less of an issue if people on prepayment meters were paying the same rates as someone on direct debit. Why can't they?
Yeah, I mean, that would be... I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, I guess there's some administrative cost in fitting this thing and monitoring it. But, yeah, it seems unfair to people who are obviously having trouble paying their bills shouldn't be paying more.
Yeah. And then, in fact, there are companies that will allow people who do get into difficulties to actually have a repayment plan without... It's this intrusion into your home on such a scale.
And it feels, that kind of forced invasion of your home. And your home will never feel quite the same again once you know that somebody can force their way into it. We've those of us who've been burgled... my home was burgled when I was 9 years old. I remember that. I remember the feeling of it, that feeling that somebody who had come into that place that I thought was a place of safety. You never quite lose that sense, and that's what's happened to these people.
Do you think it might encourage them to pay their bills?
No, I think they would, but most of these people would pay their bills if they could. What they should be on is some sort of repayment plan. Yeah. I'm not saying they should be able to not pay their bills. I'm saying that they should have longer and an easier plan to pay it.
Which some companies will allow people to do. They don't pay, Leo, because they haven't got the money. That's why they're not paying. Now, but you're going to tell us about people... a lovely story in The Telegraph about the workforce reducing.
Yeah, so the workforce, Britain's workforce is going to be permanently smaller by 500,000 people, apparently. And this is going to cause economic stagnation, as if we don't have enough economic stagnation at the moment. So basically what happened is, over lockdown, everybody got used to not working and thought, this is better than working. I didn't have to get up in the morning, and everybody got their furlough money, and they got used to that lifestyle. So now people are taking early retirement so they can carry on doing that, basically. And this is going to cause huge economic problems. And obviously the labour market is very tight at the moment. Unemployment, thankfully, is one of the good things in the economy. Unemployment's very low. So, yeah, we're going to need new workers from somewhere, whether we get them from immigration or from, cutting the public sector so that, some of the people in the public sector who don't do very much, such as equality, diversity and inclusion coordinators, those kind of people, they can be, repurposed in the workforce, doing something more productive for the country.
Does the paper go into the possibility that people will actually get bored being at home doing nothing and actually have to do something?
Yeah, people will go back to work just they don't care about the money, just to have people to talk to.
But there is a boredom effect there.
That's why I'm here.
Well, comedians never have a full-time job, do they?
No, we work 20 minutes a night. It's amazing.
Can we have a look? Sticking with a money theme. This is in The Guardian, Emma. Windfall tax. The government's under pressure to rethink what's going on with the windfall tax.
Yeah, Shell doubled their profits last year. And let's call this what it is. It's war profiteering. They are making a great deal of money.
Well, it's supply and demand.
It's supply and demand, which is what war profiteering is. It's profiteering from the fact that there is a war on and energy has been reduced so they can gouge us more for the cost of energy. And there has to be a balance. I am not saying that Shell has no right to make a profit. But if you double your profits in a year where the whole world is suffering from increased energy costs, then I think there does have to be a balance and there has to be some sort of putting that back in. Now, I'm in favour of a windfall tax, but I would like to see some sort of hypothecated investment from that windfall tax. Sorry, big word for this time in the morning. It basically said this money will go into funding people who can't, for example, pay their bills, making sure that we have lower cost energy for more people. So rather than simply putting that money into the public purse with no kind of understanding of where it might go, I think if we took that money from a windfall tax and invested it into energy infrastructure, gas storage, which we were ridiculous to cut down in this country, we would be better off in the long term, and people who are suffering would be better off too.
Emma, how much of this eye-watering figure that is everywhere is actually money that has been made here in Britain? I mean, Shell is an international company, and a lot of this money is actually being made elsewhere, and we already know the French are going to hit them for 500 million, I think.
Well, they're headquartered in the UK.
Yeah, so they don't make the money here.
They make some of the money here, they make some of the money internationally, but they pay their taxes here, so we are able to tax them here.
On what? On the profit they make here?
On the profit they make here, and, the fact that they are an oil company, so the oil won't be coming largely from here.
If we tax them more here, isn't there a risk that Shell will just move their headquarters to somewhere where they don't get these unfair taxes just sprung on them whenever they dare to make some money?
Everybody always says this, but actually, that actually doesn't happen that often because what they want is the workforce here, the work conditions here. So they want to attract the talent that wants to come to London. And that's always the trade-off. There is a trade-off to be made, but doubling your profits in a year like the one we've just had is just not a trade-off I'm willing to accept.
In 2020, Shell lost $25.5 billion. So were you clamouring for them to be paid from the public purse then?
No, my heart does not break for Shell when they lose money. I'm sorry.
But you can't have it both ways.
You can have it both ways. They weren't taxed on money when they lose it.
They provide a huge amount.
They're taxed on profits,
They provide
not
a huge
on
amount of employment, and all the money, all the profits they make get paid out to shareholders through dividends, and that's so anybody with a pension basically is reaping the rewards of Shell's profit.
Well, I would vastly separate the pensions industry from the shareholder industry because this is always the argument that comes back. You can't tax shareholder profit because of pensions. The idea that Mrs. Miggins with her pension down the road is the one who's going to suffer from this is a nonsense. It is. We need to make sure that I am not against making a profit. I'm a business person myself. I run my own business.
But not too much profit.
But yeah, exactly.
You don't want a lot of profit.
I want a reasonable amount of profit.
Some sort of Stalin-esque, sort of centrally controlled economy.
No, I want a I don't want... I'm very anti-central control. I'm a massive localist, a massive devolutionist.
Why do you want to impose a centrally controlled tax?
Because that tax could then be paid to people in Blackburn, in Bromley, in places where they can really use that money. I would disperse taxes much more.
Shell's shareholders won't be able to use that money?
Very rich people hoard money. Very poor people spend money. And that's how you reinvigorate an economy.
You think pensioners are all really rich?
No, I don't think pensioners are very rich. I think pension company shareholders are very rich.
I tell you what.
There you go.
Time out. Time out. I think because we're going to have to move on to our next story. But my gosh, I think those of you watching at home would like to join in that conversation because I'm sure it's created so much passion here in the studio. I'm sure that you sitting at home are saying, he's right, she's right, they're both wrong. Let us know.
Yes, do. GBviews at gbnews.uk. It is 6:49. Let's bring you up to date with the top stories today.
Rail passengers are facing travel disruption as fresh strikes by train drivers cause travel problems all over the country. RMT and ASLEF union members are walking out for the second time this week in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Rail operators are warning of disruption to services all day today and little to no services in some parts of the country tomorrow.
The Deputy Prime Minister is facing new allegations of bullying. It comes as anti-Brexit campaigner Gina Miller has accused Dominic Raab of launching an abusive attack on her. She says he was aggressive and intimidating during an encounter with her when he was Justice Secretary. The Prime Minister is facing mounting pressure over what he knew when he appointed Mr. Raab.
The US military is tracking a suspected Chinese spy balloon that's been flying over America in recent days. It comes ahead of a planned trip to Beijing by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. China has not yet commented. They've not said anything.
Now, let's turn our attention to showbiz, because former frontman John Lydon from the Sex Pistols is Johnny Rotten to you and me, is gearing up to compete to become Ireland's Eurovision entry.
John's band, Public Image Limited, are among 6 acts that are vying to represent Ireland at the 67th Eurovision Song Contest song in May in Liverpool.
Now, even after years of performing, he says he's still scared of getting it wrong.
Well, showbiz reporter Stephanie Tichy is... I get it wrong again, didn't I?
Most people do
Tichy is with us, wearing the most stunning colour.
It
looks
pretty
fabulous
stylish today.
Fabulous.
I love your
It looks great. It looks great. Now, you have to tell us about Johnny Rotten.
Yes.
This is a love song, apparently, that he's written to his wife, isn't it?
It's called Hawaii, and it's dedicated to his wife, Nora Foster. She's living with Alzheimer's disease, and I can imagine, like, anyone who has a loved one who's going through Alzheimer's disease, it's quite heartbreaking. So this is his love song to her, and he says it's a universal song, but it's quite personal and it's quite pensive. And his rebellious, it's almost 50 years since he took on the establishment with his Anarchy song. And now this is more of a less rebellious nature, and it's with his band Public Image Limited. So today, most countries now are starting to put forward their acts for the Eurovision. So tonight in Ireland, on their broadcaster RTE, there'll be 6 acts who are hoping that the public will vote for them, and Johnny and his band is one of them.
But I mean, look, come on, he's got an unfair advantage here because he's getting so much publicity.
He is, but in his true rebellious nature, he says he thinks Eurovision is awful.
Yes, he
says he hasn't watched it before, but this is obviously a cause which is quite close to his heart. So I think he will get a lot of support. But, you know, Ireland has won the Eurovision 7 times. So they have a good knack of picking the right act. So maybe he will win it. But there's other people who they're up against. So he might not win it. But I think he's got a really good shot.
Have you heard the song?
Yes, I have.
And?
It's very emotional because, obviously, he's talking about his wife with Alzheimer's. So there's lyrics such as, I remember you, remember me. So it's not nothing punky, it's not rocky, it's Johnny, you know...
He's not got the smoothest voice, has he?
No, but I think he can still go... I think he could still go through, actually, which will be good. So tonight, people in Ireland, there'll be a studio jury, there'll be an international jury, and people can vote to who they want to see represent Ireland in the Eurovision in May.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's going to be... I think it's really interesting because what you tend to forget is that, obviously, Anyone from any country can represent any country.
Yeah, and like the rules are changed this year because we've got people outside the Eurovision who can compete. So we've got Australia, who's always a bit of a wild card. Because the Aussies love the Eurovision so much, they can take part. You've got Israel, you've got Armenia, and people internationally this year can vote for their favourite act. So it's all changed this year, but it's a special one. We saw Liverpool this week take the keys and be the Eurovision people who will be representing the country, but it's actually Ukraine. This is all about Ukraine this year because they rightfully won, but due to the invasion, they won't be able to hold it in Ukraine this year.
They will be obviously entering a song of their own there.
Yes, they will. So I haven't heard who they're going to be representing because luckily for people such as the UK, Spain, Germany, Italy, we call them the Big Five. They don't have to worry about the semi-finals. They go straight through to the finals, and it will be the same for Ukraine this year. But there's 20 spots up for grabs, so it'll be quite interesting to see who makes it to the final on May 13th.
Who's doing it for the UK?
We're not going to find out for a couple of weeks because we don't have to do the semi-finals. So we're going to probably find out in March, but it could be Sam Ryder again because you can represent your country more than once.
Interesting.
Do we really want to do it twice?
No, I think we're bigger than that. We've got enough talent.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be quite interesting. What do you make of Eurovision, Angela? Are you a fan?
I presented it in 1976. Yes, that's another story.
Oh no, I think that's wonderful. I think it's one of those institutions we love to hate.
Mireille Mathieu won it.
But with
Muriel Matthews, in other words, for France. Yeah.
And with Wogan and his commentary back in the day.
Yeah, Wogan did the commentary. I did the introductions from Wembley.
Fabulous. Absolutely love it. Let us know what you think, and if you're looking forward to it. I saw that. I always do. We've got much more to come for you, including the latest on the missing dog walker and mother of two, Nicola Bulley, 1 week on from her disappearance. We're still no closer to knowing any answers.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday's looking dry for the majority, pretty mild out there this morning as well. Not a huge amount of sunshine, most places staying fairly drab. High pressure is in control, certainly across the south. We've got low pressure and these weather fronts linking back, which are bringing a lot of cloud and in places damp starts, light rain and drizzle, clearing from Northern Ireland, but still affecting parts of northwest England. And it will be another fairly damp morning for western Scotland. The rain won't be as heavy as yesterday, and it will push away to the north, so much of the west coast will become dry through the afternoon. Northwest England should also slowly turn a bit drier. Some brighter skies for Wales and southwest England. Could see some sunny spells further east as well. And it is mild temperatures this afternoon, getting up to maybe 13, perhaps 14 Celsius, where we see some sunshine. Even where it's damp in northern Scotland, temperatures are above average. The rain will continue to trickle across the Northern Isles through Friday evening. There'll be a bit of drizzle here and there around western coasts and hills, but for most places it's a dry night. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud, a few clearer spells, which may allow temperatures to drop down to 4 or 5 Celsius, but certainly for most towns and cities, we'll see the temperatures holding up at 6 or 7. So a mild start to the weekend, and for most it'll be a dry day on Saturday, certainly for England and Wales. Some drizzle around the coast and hills of Wales, and we will see some rain heading into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Initially into the northwest. By lunchtime that'll be spreading across Northern Ireland and then through central and southern Scotland during Saturday afternoon. It won't rain all day, it will move through. And western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland likely to turn a bit brighter through the afternoon. For most of England and Wales, much of the day will be dry and again mild, double figures almost across the board. But look at Sunday's temperatures, single figures. It will be turning cooler, but as well as that, we'll have light winds on Sunday and plenty of sunshine.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's been 1 week since Lancashire dog walker Nicola Bulley disappeared.
Good morning to you. 7 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Angela. These are your top stories.
The family of missing mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, have said that their lives have been emptied after the 45-year-old mortgage advisor went missing in St Michael's on Wire last Friday.
It comes after Lancashire Police released a CCTV image of a potential witness yesterday. Nicola's sister, Louise, has urged anyone with information to come forward.
From whether the Prime Minister can tackle the sleaze in Westminster to your opinion on strikes and Boris Johnson's possible return to politics, we're going to deliver the result of our GB News People's Poll.
More train strike misery this morning as drivers walk out for the second time this week. We're going to be live at stations right across the country as operators say the industrial action could have a knock-on effect this weekend.
And the number of people with cancer will rise by a third by 2040. Cancer Research UK has warned that the NHS risks being overwhelmed by new diagnoses unless the government takes action.
And as ever, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Just have to drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, today marks exactly a week since mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, went missing while walking her dog alongside the River Wye in Lancashire last Friday morning after dropping her 2 daughters at the local primary school.
Nicola's family are desperately searching for answers as the police search continues, with her 2 daughters, aged 6 and 9, desperate to have their mummy back.
Well, with police continuing the search today, let's talk to retired Met Police Officer Graham Wetton, friend of the programme, as always. Morning to you, Graham. I mean, this seems incredibly difficult for the police to move. They don't seem to have anything good to go on at the moment.
No, various lines of inquiries will be open. This will be escalated very quickly into a high-risk missing person. And you really start with investigating the person themselves. And again, that then means you have to speak to those closest to them to find out about what was going on in their life, how they felt. Has this happened before? So various lines of inquiry. They have to keep an open mind and look at everything. You've seen extensive searches going on. That's quite a steep riverbank from the pictures I've seen. Dog was found as well. The mobile phone was found. So they've got some lines of inquiry around the phone itself and investigating that, but still keeping an open mind a week on into the search.
I mean, all the evidence that we're reading about in the papers suggests, A, the dog was dry, so no thought that perhaps it had jumped into the river, that it had its jacket taken off and its lead was taken off. The phone was just left on the side of the bench, but it was still connected to the Teams meeting that she'd been having with her colleagues. And all of it seems to suggest that perhaps she was snatched, and yet the police are saying, as I understand it, that no third person, as far as they're concerned at the moment, is featuring in their inquiries.
No, but again, as you said, rightly pointed out there, no suspicious circumstances, not being treated from what I've seen as a crime scene as such. They're treating it as a missing person inquiry. You're right about the phone being found, and again, good to point out the fact that the dog lead and the jacket, etc., was found. The dog, from what we know, appeared to be dry, so that would have been one line of inquiry from. Did the dog go in the water? Did she go in after the dog, etc.? But these are all possibles that they'll still be looking at and trying to find out exactly what happened.
But in terms of assessing her character, I mean, her parents, I think I'm right in saying, have said someone's taken her. I mean, they seem to think this is out of character for her.
Yeah, but again, the police will be looking at all the possible evidence, looking at phone downloads, etc. Any sightings of anybody else. I think they found one possible witness. They've now appealed for a second one. This will be all part of the inquiry. The access routes to the area that she was. They'll be checking cameras, checking witnesses in the local area, any strange car scene, any people that people haven't seen before in that area. I understand it's a small local village, so people notice things like this. So again, the possibility that she was taken by someone has been well looked into, and at the moment they're saying there are no suspicious circumstances. And I think we have to run with that from what the officers that are investigating this are saying.
Mm. Graham, we've seen her parents now giving absolutely heartbreaking interviews. What sort of support are they getting in a situation like this?
The police put in, and you hear it all the time, specially trained officers, family liaison officers that will be supporting all members of the family as they go through this process. They keep them updated on the inquiry. They keep them updated on the investigations that are taking place, the extent of the search that's taking place. They'll be updated on that on a daily basis. Those family liaison officers work exceptionally closely with the family. They build up a very strong relationship, and they will keep them updated as to any information whatsoever that the investigation team discover.
I mean, I don't know how many times we've talked over the years, Graham, and when we talk about investigations, there is normally a line of inquiry that police are following. I mean, from what you seem to be saying, they're just trying to hit all the bases at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any clear line for them to follow.
No, and that's the right thing to do. One thing that you have to avoid as an investigator is literally latching onto one line of inquiry and excluding all other possible options. You have to keep an open mind in all investigations, even though it may well be that the answer is looking you right in the face. You have to exclude every other possibility before you're left with the only option that could have taken place.
But it's a mystery, this one, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, strange one. Very strange one indeed. Just looking at all the circumstances, as we've mentioned, the phone, the dog being found, totally out of character, family, the close family coming on and making the family appeal, totally unlike her. The two girls at home, the dog that apparently she adores, etc. Nothing in the background that we've heard reported would suggest that she would. And you have to look at this as well. Do the people who have gone missing want to be found? Is there something that's made them move away? And from what we've heard, nothing of that ilk either in this case. So a very strange one indeed.
Graham, thank you very much indeed for that. As we say, mystery continues, but let's hope that it doesn't end with tragedy.
No, that's
always, don't we?
Let's hope not.
Yeah. Now, we'll bring you now the very latest results of the GB News People's Poll. We're tackling sleaze, because apparently that is the big issue.
Yeah, just try and get your heads around this. Yeah. Just 1% of voters are completely confident in Rishi Sunak being able to tackle sleaze in British politics. 55% are not confident at all that he can.
While on the issue of the teachers' strike, 48% say that they support the strikes, 28% oppose them, but it's important to say that 24% don't know or preferred not to answer.
Now, all this, of course, makes pretty grim reading for the government, who now find themselves 24 points behind the Labour Party in the national polls.
Well, to take us through our People's Poll in a bit more detail is the academic and Professor of Politics, Matt Goodwin. Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. This is not going to make happy reading for the Prime Minister over the weekend, is it?
No, this is not happy reading at all. Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives are still 24 points adrift of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. It doesn't look like the Prime Minister is turning around the political equivalent of the Titanic. When we look at those all-important questions about things like the economy, the NHS, and now cleaning up sleaze in British politics after the Nadhim Zahawi case, I mean, he is not connecting currently with the British public. Everybody is pretty fed up, actually, with how things are working in the country, and they're taking it out on the government.
In terms of connecting with the British public, a lot of Tory MPs, a lot of Tory voters would say, well, you need Boris Johnson for that. Yet the poll, you've asked whether there is support for Boris Johnson returning to the cabinet. It doesn't seem to be there.
It's not there, Stephen. We've asked to what extent, if at all, do you support Boris Johnson returning to the cabinet, and only about 1 in 5 of all voters are supportive of the former Prime Minister returning. A much larger number, almost half, say not really up for Boris Johnson returning. And, I think basically in my mind, what we're looking at here is actually a collapse of confidence in all of our political leaders, on the left, on the right. Even if you look at somebody like Keir Starmer, who's leading Labour, which is well ahead in the polls, his net ratings are still pretty flat. I think a lot of people are looking at politics today and just saying, I'm not sure anybody really has the answers for these big problems that are facing the country. I'm not sure anybody's got a long-term vision for the economy, for the NHS, for the cost of living crisis. They're certainly not overawed by the idea of bringing back Boris. So even though that's a very popular idea on the Conservative fringes among some Conservative activists, when it comes to the wider country, actually, I think Boris and his team have still got a lot of work to do if they're planning on this comeback.
We're also looking at the classic situation after a party has been in power for a very long time, that in general, just to back up what you're saying, people are weary of what is going on in politics at the moment, weary of the present government and the present team, and actually, regardless of what they might feel about the opposition, they're just ready for a change.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. When we ask people about this notion of change, large majorities say they're ready for a change. They want to change. They're not sure what that change is going to look like, but they're profoundly disappointed with where things have ended up. I mean, we had another poll a few weeks ago that asked people, do you think Britain's in decline? 7 in 10 of us said, yeah, we think the country's in decline. And only a quarter of us think our children are going to have better lives than we've had. So there's a pessimism setting in. And I think there are lots of reasons to be optimistic, actually, about where we are. You could put inflation starting to come down. We're turning the corner on the energy crisis. The end of 2023 is going to look a lot different from the beginning of 2023. There's a lot of reasons, actually, I think personally, to be a bit optimistic about where we are. But the country aren't feeling really any of that. They are taking it out on the incumbent government. They're saying, look, you've been in power for 12 years. The country's like this. You've failed to solve these issues. And unless things change, we're not just looking at a tight election, which could be as early as spring 2024. We're looking at a complete wipeout for the incumbent Conservative Party. It will be even a bigger wipeout, potentially, than 1997. And some of your viewers will remember that. So we are living, again, through pretty historic times here.
Interesting that when it comes... it's another headache for the government, all the strike action that's going on, and we know consistently, actually, people have... it's a bit of a surprise in a way, but people have consistently sort of backed the strikers rather than oppose their action. You've asked specifically about the teachers' strike.
Yeah, we have, and almost half of the country expressed support for the teachers' strike. And this is pretty consistent with other polling on the rail strikes, on paramedics. And what we've seen is higher levels of support than you might imagine. Now, that might be because we are the working from home generation. Maybe people feel after COVID they're less disrupted by the strikes. They're able to navigate the strikes without meeting the chaos and so on. Maybe there's also a big dose of sympathy for the people on strike, and everybody's saying, you know what, we're not idiots. We know the country's run out of money. We know everybody's had a hard decade. But this is very different from earlier years. You go back to the 70s, the 80s, people really got fed up with the strikes pretty early on. This time around, actually, people are pretty more, they're more sort of relaxed about it. They're sort of navigating it. They're saying, well, I'm just fed up, and if they want to strike, they want to strike. And by the way, Stephen, there's very little support for making it harder for people to strike. I mean, when we poll that question about is Rishi Sunak right to be bringing in new laws, these again do not find much support. So, something has changed in the British psyche over the last few years, I think, and the strikes are another example of that.
It's interesting. Matt, thanks very much indeed. Well, joining us in the studio once again, Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Morning, Michael. I mean, look, as Matt was saying there, you look at all the results across all of these questions pretty much, and it is grim for the government? How do they begin to tackle this, or are they just steady the ship?
Well, I think you're right, and I think what Matt was talking about there made a lot of sense. And I think at the end of 2023, it will look a lot different to what the start looks like. We'll see inflation coming down. We'll start to see what Rishi Sunak announced only last week, some of the issues in the NHS being dealt with. We'll see the economy growing. Hopefully, we'll see progress in Ukraine, energy bills coming down. So there'll be lots of progress by the end of 2023, which I think might give that optimism and that approach that people will have a second look at Rishi and think, actually, the Conservatives and this government are delivering for people.
But he made the point, they've been in power now for 12 years. They've only got about 12 months now to turn it around. I mean, he used the word wipeout, which is what he suspects is what the Tory party is facing when we go to a general election sometime in 2024.
Yes. Yeah,
they haven't got any... they're running out of time, aren't they?
You're absolutely right. Timing is of the essence. And, the government really does need to demonstrate what it is doing to win the support where people clearly are, as Matt rightly said again, politics out, as it were. So making sure that the government delivers on what it says it's going to do, so tackling inflation, growing the economy, tackling the problems that we have in the NHS and stopping the small boats issues. Those were Rishi Sunak's 5 priorities that he set out at the start of this year. So getting on top of all of those issues and delivering will be the way in which I think the public start to then see that this is a government that, OK, albeit in 12, 13 years in the running, but this is a Prime Minister that's actually delivering on what he's said he's going to deliver. The politics of the past and the divisions that we've seen under Brexit with Theresa May, under Boris, under Liz, all of that is behind us, and Rishi is delivering for the country.
What do you make of what Angela posed, actually, to Matt just before? The idea that after 12, 13 years, people do just get ready for a change. I mean, it's the political cycle, isn't it? I mean, is there any way of avoiding that?
I think there is, because, again, I think what Matt was rightly saying, that there doesn't seem to be a huge love for Sir Keir Starmer as an individual and, therefore, the Labour Party. And, look, the Labour Party themselves need to be scrutinised as much as the current government, and you've got Labour MPs like Rosie Duffield very bravely standing up in the House of Commons and saying that, being in the Labour Party was like living with an abusive partner because the Labour Party is unable to defend what she thinks is clearly women's rights. Now, that is a whole issue that the country is talking about, but there is issues within the Labour Party which I don't think the public are convinced enough that Labour and Sir Keir Starmer can lead the country and do better. I think there is just a lot of political a lack of apathy for any party at the moment.
Yeah, we do have this sort of democratic dilemma, don't we? And that we've got basically 2 major parties, and we flip-flop between the 2 of them, don't we?
Oh, we do, and the poor old Lib Dems and the Greens and Reform will try and sap up some of the lack of energetic support there might be for either main political party, the Tories or Labour. But it really will be a choice at the next general election between Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party or Rishi Sunak's Conservatives, and it'll be about who can deliver, who can do what they say they're going to do, but also provides a vision for the future and taking us out of the crisis.
And there will always be the attitude, well, let's give the other lot a chance because we've had this lot for 12 years. I mean, that's how it works, isn't it?
Absolutely, which is why timing, as you rightly said, is of the essence to make sure that the Conservatives and the government under Rishi gets on with the programme that it says it's going to do and can win people back by showing what it's doing, not just telling.
OK. Charlie, thank you very much indeed. Being optimistic there, Charlie. Yes. That's always...
That's why he's here.
Optimistic from his perspective, yes. Of course. If you've got a view on that, if you think it's time for a change or not, you want to wait and see, love to hear from you at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories as it is 17 minutes past 7. British Gas is under pressure as it faces criticism to compensate vulnerable customers following reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing the prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. Ofgem has called for action, not warm words. The regulator announced yesterday that it was launching an investigation into the matter and have asked suppliers to review the use of court warrants to enter customers' homes.
The average price for motor insurance has increased by 8% towards the end of last year. The Association of British Insurers says the typical premium of £470 was up 7% in the last 3 months of 2021. The trade body says it's due to the rise, wait for it, in the cost of paint and the jump in energy prices.
Former Sex Pistols frontman Johnny Rotten says he is still terrified of getting it wrong as he prepares to become Ireland's Eurovision entry. Rotten, real name John Lydon, and his band Public Image are among the 6 acts who are competing to represent Ireland this May. The others include Wild Youth, Layla Jane and Andrew Carr.
We were asking you about posh soap in your downstairs toilet earlier on, because it's a survey in the Telegraph saying, you know, people like posh soap downstairs. I don't.
Well, we had a lovely comment from Margaret who says, I wonder if some people buy the expensive soap and then use it to keep the bottle topped up with a supermarket brand for less than £1.
You see, now that's sensible thinking.
Isn't it?
That's sensible thinking. Anne says, morning to you. I'm not even posh enough to have a downstairs toilet. My upstairs bathroom has the cheapest liquid soap possible. It does the trick. It does the trick. It smells
you do
all
that,
right.
you get a froth and it washes your hands.
Exactly. All this £50 for a bottle of... £50 for 250 millilitres of the most expensive one they've been trying in the Telegraph.
And I bet it's got a very strong perfume to it, which probably overlays the perfume or the aftershave that you may already be wearing. So
I'm sure it may be lovely, but...
I like Margaret's idea.
Yeah, quite right. Good one, Margaret. We could set our little business going doing that, couldn't we? Yeah, way to do it. Now, today, train passengers are facing another day of travel chaos. Drivers striking for the second time this week, causing most services across England to be cancelled.
Train drivers working under ASLEF and the RMT unions are walking out over an unsettled dispute concerning pay, job security and working practices.
And operators say strike action may also affect services on Saturday. So, is there really any end in sight? Well, let's talk to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's at Euston Station for us this morning. Morning, Paul.
Yeah, morning, Stephen. Morning, Angela. Look, it's early doors here, but we are expecting a picket line later. Inside the station, not many people around, to be honest. A few cleaners walking around, the odd passenger here or there that's coming off the tube, but it is an empty station because no trains are running from here. In fact, only 80% of trains won't be running across Great Britain today. Most of them in England. There's knock-on effect for Scotland and Wales. You talk about travel chaos, but to be honest, it's not chaotic in there. There's so few people because this is the 8th day of strike action by ASLEF. We've had at least a month of rail strikes in total when you include the action by the RMT. People are kind of used to it by now. They're working from home. They're finding ways to get around it. That's not to say there's not huge disruption to the rail industry itself, which has a huge hole in its finances, but also wider knock-on effects for the hospitality and the economy. In terms of the dispute itself, ASLEF, at the moment, the deal on the table from the Rail Delivery Group, which represents rail operators, is 4% backdated pay to last year, 4% this year. ASLEF say that is unacceptable. It comes with terms and conditions attached to it, such as changes to Sunday working, which ASLEF say they're not having any of it, and they could announce further rail dates. In terms of the dispute between RMT and Network Rail and the Rail Delivery Group, they're mulling over an offer from the government at the moment. Spoke to Mick Lynch on Sunday. He said, I'm not standing up to applaud this deal. We're not getting off our feet for it, but we are considering it. We're putting it to members at the moment, and we'll come back to you with a response next week. So it sounds like the RMT could agree a settlement with the rail employers next week, but in terms of rail drivers, whom ASLEF represents, there's no end in sight to the industrial action yet, and they say that there could be further dates announced.
Bit of optimism there coming out of Euston Station this morning. Thanks very much indeed for that. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that indeed that does come to pass.
Yeah, let's hope so. Look, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, but then straight up after that, we're talking to Stephen Kinnick, the Shadow Immigration Minister, who's we think, going to be talking about Dominic Raab and that investigation into his conduct.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
You even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already depressed.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela. Here's what else is coming up today.
Well, Cancer Research UK has warned the public that new cases could rise by 30% by 2040. At 10 to 8, we're going to be talking to the former chief of the World Health Organization's cancer programme about the increase and what we can do to protect ourselves.
And at 8:15, we head down to Euston Station and up to Birmingham New Street to get the latest on the ongoing rail strikes that are sweeping across the country today.
And if you're struggling to get to work or stuck at a station, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. OK, let's talk politics, should we, this morning?
Yes.
There's lots to get through, and we're joined by the Shadow Minister for Immigration, Stephen Kinnick. Morning to you, Mr. Kinnick. Nice to see you, as always. Look, first and foremost, I know you want to talk about money, interest rates and all the rest of it, and we will get to that, I promise you. But can we ask first and foremost about Dominic Raab, the Deputy Prime Minister, and this ongoing investigation into whether or not he's bullied staff? We know Labour says more needs to be done on this, but isn't there an ongoing investigation that has to run its course?
Yes, there is, but Mr. Raab should be suspended whilst that investigation is ongoing, because I think it's pretty clear now that everybody that works around him is not... there seems to be a pattern of behaviour from Mr. Raab, and it's not fair on his colleagues that they are having to work with somebody who is potentially a bully and a tyrant and somebody who disrespects the colleagues that he works with. So he should be suspended. And if Rishi Sunak had any strength or judgment or leadership quality, that is what he would be doing. But we're seeing this pattern of behaviour as well from Mr. Sunak, I'm afraid. The Zahawi case being the most obvious case in point, that he doesn't really have the strength and the leadership that's required to manage his cabinet and his government, and particularly when his cabinet and government are so full of people that are either embroiled in financial scandal or in things like bullying, like Mr. Raab.
Mr. Kinnick, you can't lump what happened with Zadine Nahawi in with what you're talking about Dominic Raab, because that was a decision that was made incredibly quickly, within 6 days.
Well, I'm using that more as an example of the weakness of the Prime Minister.
But why was it weak? He took decision very quickly as soon as he had the results.
Yeah, but it was all a matter of public record with Mr. Zahawi. There was no need to have an advisor to tell you what was already in the newspapers by Mr. Zahawi's own admission. He hadn't paid his tax. He was being pursued by the HMRC whilst he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. And so there was no need for an investigation into that, because by Mr. Zahawi's own admission, it was an absolutely clear conflict of interest and a total failing of any ethical or moral behaviour that you need when you're in a vitally important position like being Chancellor of the Exchequer. So that should have just been dealt with rapidly. And of course, in the end, it was inevitable that Mr. Zahawi had to go. I mean, of course, with Dominic Raab, what you see is somebody that, whilst he was Foreign Secretary, was on a sun lounger on his holidays and refusing to get off the sun lounger whilst the Taliban were retaking Afghanistan. There isn't really a great track record there in terms of somebody that performs well in his position anyway. So there's an issue around competence, there's an issue around the way in which he behaves. And we've got a Prime Minister who stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level of his government. And on every one of those measures, he is failing dramatically.
Can we ask about immigration? Because the Labour Party's on general election footing. We know that. It's pretty clear. The government has, in the last few hours, officially abandoned plans, we understand, to house asylum seekers at this Pontins holiday camp on Merseyside. They were trying to do that to reduce hotel bills and what have you. That's fallen through. The local people didn't want it. Understandable. But what options are there? What would the Labour Party do?
So we have to fix the backlog. And the backlog can be fixed by increasing the number of Home Office caseworkers and decision makers who are at the right level of seniority. In 2013, for reasons best known to the Conservative Party, they decided to downgrade the seniority of caseworkers and decision makers from higher executive grade to executive grade. As a result, you ended up with caseworkers and decision makers who are less experienced, with less expertise. They ended up making decisions which were then more open to appeal, which again clogs up the system still further. So we would reinstate the senior executive level. We would surge numbers of caseworkers and decision makers, because the fundamental issue here is the backlog. There are 150,000 people in our asylum system who've been waiting more than 6 months for a decision. 37,000 in hotels, costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day. And it's that backlog which is making the government have to find Butlins holiday camps and Pontins holiday camps and all the rest of it, rather than getting people out of the system and into dispersed accommodation through working with local authorities more effectively. And of course, then it's about negotiating a returns agreement. We know that the Conservatives are not going to be able to do that because they've destroyed our relationship with our European partners and allies. We need a Labour government in that will actually be able to do that deal and have that proper negotiation with the EU so that we can return people to the first safe country that they came to. And of course, we fully understand and respect the fact that there are safe countries. Albania is a safe country. And it was a Labour government, actually, in the early 2000s that created the so-called whitelist of countries that were safe for people to be returned to. But because of the backlog and because of the total dysfunctionality of the Home Office, and incompetence that we see there. Though people are not being returned to Albania, they're not being returned to safe countries. The Rwanda plan is unaffordable, unethical, and unworkable. The whole thing is a mess, I'm afraid, and it's going to be a huge task for us to clear this up once we get into government.
Mr. Kinnick, I know you have to go off to do other interviews, but I would like to ask you very quickly if you have a comment at all on the rise in interest rates. I mean, where does the Labour Party stand on that, and what are your results going to, or what actions are you going to take so that we have a much more stable economy where that's concerned?
Well, every time interest rates go up, it's bad news for households across the country. It's bad news for our economy more broadly. It sucks demand out of the economy and leads again to lower growth, and you get into the vicious cycle. So Labour is clear that the sticking plaster solutions aren't working. We need a fundamentally new economic model based on investment, based on a partnership between business and government, and a big part of that will be our green prosperity plan. £28 billion to be invested in the new technologies of the future, such as renewable wind and solar. It is about insulating 19 million homes, using that to stimulate proper economic growth, good jobs, well-paid jobs, highly skilled jobs, and that, of course, leads to more tax being paid into the exchequer, helps to balance the books, and helps to bear down on inflation, helps to deal with our productivity crisis as well. So it's about having an investment-based, growth-led strategy, looking at the fundamentals of our economy, giving more power away from government to local authorities as well, where you've got local businesses and local authorities that are much better placed to make decisions about what's right for the local economy than the man in Whitehall in a suit, if you like. So it needs a fundamentally new strategy, a new approach. These sticking plaster solutions aren't working, and we're seeing now the results of 13 years of the cost of doing nothing.
Mr. Kinnick, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know we have to let you go now, but we appreciate the time you've given us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we've got much more to come, including all the news and views from the papers. That's in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Far.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela.
Let's have a look at the newspapers for you this morning. The Times has an investigation into British Gas, who, through an intermediary, broke into vulnerable people's homes to fit prepayment meters.
The Guardian leads with Shell's profit announcement, which the TUC union has called obscene.
The Express says the Bank of England's forecast on the UK economy is, wait for it, looking optimistic.
While the Daily Mail leads with the disappearance of Nicola Bulley in Lancashire 1 week on.
OK, let's see what journalist and playwright Emma Burnell and comedian Leo Kearse have found for us this morning.
Shall we start with you, Leo? Because Nicola Sturgeon is under real criticism in The Telegraph, isn't she?
Yeah.
For her views on gender laws.
That's right. Well, so the SNP, who run the Parliament in Scotland, they brought through a law, the Gender Reform Bill, that basically makes it much easier to transition. You just say you're a woman and then you magically, poof, you're a woman. And this that came in for some criticism. They said it could be exploited by predatory men who might say that they're women to get access to women's spaces such as female prisons. And obviously we're told, no, you're being transphobic. Well, this would never happen.
But no one... to say used by predatory men to get access, no one's going to deliberately go to prison.
But if, so say, for example, you're convicted of rape, you could then say you're a woman during the court proceedings and then get access to a women's prison where you can presumably, continue offending or certainly have a nicer time of it than in a male prison. And, we were told, no, you're being transphobic, this would never happen. The next week, it literally happened. So there's a double rapist who now goes by the name of Isla Bryson and has transitioned just by calling himself a woman and putting on a wig. And Nicola Sturgeon has come under a huge amount of flack. He's now been moved from a women's prison to a male prison. So people are saying, well, Nicola, your law doesn't stand up. If you're saying if you've literally moved this man from a women's prison to a man's prison, then this undermines your whole gender ideology law. And so she still refuses to say whether Isla Bryson is a woman or not. And a child can look at Isla Bryson and say, no, that's obviously a bloke. You know what I mean?
No, that's not fair.
No, it is fair.
No, it's not. It's not fair because some people in early stages of transition, it's quite obvious they're transitioning. So that's not fair. It's not to say, because that could apply to a lot of people who are genuinely transitioning.
The thing is, Nicola Sturgeon is in deep doo-doo with this whole subject, isn't she?
Well, and also, the problem is, you use the phrase they're genuinely transitioning. The problem with self-ID law is that there is no transition, there is no process. It's taking out any of the therapy, any of the psychiatric evaluation, any of the medical evaluation, any of the medical process, and simply saying, not even, as a feminist, I don't find gender a useful construct, but there are things that match the two sexes, of which there are two sexes, that we then say, well, the girls wear this and boys wear this. So if you socially transition, you would then dress in the matching gender to the matching sex. But the problem is, and where Nicola Sturgeon is making a fool of herself, frankly, is if she stood up a week 2 weeks after trying to pass this law, saying, I don't have enough information. That's the phrase she used. I don't have enough information to say whether this is a man or a woman. But self-ID, and what feminists have been warning about, is self-ID is simply somebody telling you that's what they are.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with self-ID. It's, there are people, and we know from the recent census that 0.5% of people identify as trans, and many of them will go through a process, and we should be as kind as possible and as accommodating as possible, but without impinging on women's rights.
Yeah, well, but how do we use this without, or talk about this and deal with this in a sensible way that actually doesn't fund is the wrong word, doesn't channel transphobia, because some people will jump on this and
of course they will.
Actually, trans people.
There are going
to be. This is the thing. I mean, it's like the biggest, as well as causing potential harm to women in prisons and women in women's spaces. It harms transgender people, genuine transgender people who are genuinely transgender and put the effort into transitioning. This is predatory men coming in and exploiting the self-ID system. So a move to a self-ID system is a terrible idea. It means I could just say I'm a woman and I'm magically a woman
and come in a frock tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't even need to wear a frock.
No, I wear trousers a lot. It doesn't make me a man. I wear skirts sometimes. It doesn't make me more of a woman. And I think we absolutely have to be completely cognizant of the fact that some trans people have a very, very hard time, and there is some very, very nasty things said, and they should not be said. And when they are said by people on my side of the debate around self-ID and gender, I will always call that out. But that doesn't mean that we should then adopt laws that impinge on women's rights and the right to single-sex spaces.
Okay.
Yep.
Or indeed the other way around.
Indeed.
There's women who wish to
absolutely.
That's an interesting point, just briefly, Angela, on that one, because the focus is always on men becoming women and not the other way around.
In the law focus, that's right, because women have single-sex spaces because, as we've often said, we know absolutely that not all men are rapists. We just don't know which ones are, and that's why we need protection in single-sex spaces. But there are real issues about the increased amount of young teenage girls who are identifying out of their own sex and saying that they're boys, and that is something that we should also be looking at.
Well, that set off a discussion, didn't it? Emma, you're looking at something a little bit more light-hearted, aren't you? Which is in the Mail today, which says that 1 in 3 Britons don't know their neighbours' names.
Yes, I think this is really sad. I'm so lucky. I live in a building with 10 flats in. We have a very active WhatsApp group. We all look out for each other. We all make sure that we take in and out the bins together. My neighbours have got my lovely, lovely neighbours, whose names I know. They're Emma and Ben. Hello, Emma and Ben, if you're watching. They've got my keys. They feed my cat. I feed their cats. And I think that kind of social solidarity is something that would be really missed if we don't have it.
I hang about with my neighbours. They're very nice. They're very nice, my neighbours. But
well, you don't have to hang about with them, Stephen, but you know their names, right?
The bins out at the same time. But I know the names on one side, but not the other.
Right.
Well,
what have they done?
What about you? Do you know your neighbours?
Yeah, I mean, we only moved in a few months ago, but yeah, I know the neighbours' names. But yeah, let's face it, this isn't a British problem. This is an English problem. In Scotland, everybody knows all their neighbours' names, and everybody's an uncle or an auntie to the neighbours' kids and stuff. But yeah, I think in London particularly, people are a bit more standoffish. I remember when I first moved to London, you just start talking to people at the bus stop, because that's what you do in Glasgow. Oh, yeah. And people would be like, I
wonder.
don't have any money.
I do wonder if it's partly because kids don't play in the streets the way they used to anymore, and that used to be a way that everyone knew each other, because you'd all just pour out of your houses and talk to each other, and then the parents would have to come out at some point, probably about the same time, and get you all. And I think part of one of the problems is that we don't have those kind of shared experiences anyway in the same way anymore.
I like shutting my door and not.
Oh no, I know my neighbours in London. I've got John and Caroline next door, and they're lovely.
Yeah, I'm in East London, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Down in Devon, where I have my old family home. I know the neighbours all around. There's Anne, there's Peter, there's Jack, there's Kay, there's I know all of them. And
I'd just like to defend London very quickly, because I'm a Londoner. I was born here. I've lived here all my life, and I've always known my neighbours. So I think London's what you make of it.
Yeah, but it's not like being a northerner.
Yeah, because you don't want to talk to anyone.
Oh, come on, you're maligning Northerners. Northerners are lovely people.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm a northerner.
I know, but you don't know your neighbours.
I do run up north. Leo, let's have this. I don't understand. Mason Greenwood, a Manchester United fan, saying Mason Greenwood should never play for the team again.
Yeah,
he was accused of attempted rape.
That's right, about a year ago,
and it's been dropped entirely.
So the Crown Prosecution Service have dropped the charges because the key witness has pulled out, is not cooperating anymore. So I don't know what's happened there. So he's not going to face criminal charges, but I mean, there's that video or series of videos released to the internet. So I think most of us have seen those videos and know, what those videos showed. So, I mean, obviously, I can't speculate. I can't say too much because it's, I don't want to get into legal hot water.
No.
But, the fans...
He's an innocent man.
He's in the eyes of the law, he's an innocent man. But we saw those videos. So I think the fans are right to have some questions and have some doubts about whether he should return.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I haven't seen the videos, so I don't know.
And I don't care about football, so...
No.
There wasn't football in the videos.
Well, no. Let's just swiftly move away for legal reasons for that one. To The Guardian, Emma, looking at butterflies vanishing. Now, this actually worries.
It really is. Something like 80%, they're saying, of the butterfly population since 1979 has reduced. Now, this is something that's quite personal to me. My grandfather, who was a statistician, he was a wonderful man, part of what he did, actually, was... after retirement, because he was not the kind of man who retires properly, he actually helped them build statistical models for the counting of butterflies. So this is a family thing. And what's happening is there are some good news stories. We have reintroduced some species that were made extinct, but they are concentrated now in areas, in wildlife areas, and we're not seeing them in urban areas, in suburban areas. So there is just not the real density of the butterfly population that we used to have. 80%, an enormous number to lose.
Everyone needs to buy a buddleia. There you go.
Yes.
Attracts
the butterfly plant.
Exactly.
But not just buddleias. There are lots of plants that you can have in your
just
garden.
Just planting some wildflowers. Yeah,
even
absolutely.
If you've only got a pot or a hanging basket.
I mean, I have a slight problem in that my cat loves to chase them away.
Oh, there you do. It keeps them busy. Keeps the cats busy. Just hope he's a useless hunter. Thank you both. We're going to leave it there for the time being. See you a little bit later on.
Now, Cancer Research UK, as we've been hearing in the headlines, are warning that UK cancer diagnoses are set to rise by a third by 2040 if current trends continue, meaning that over 500,000 new cases every year for the first time on record.
Now, the charity's made it clear that the NHS, as it stands, would be overwhelmed by the volume of patients if the government didn't act soon. Let's talk to oncologist and former chief of the WHO's cancer programme, Carol Sikora. Carol, it's good to see you. What's driving this increase?
It's mainly ageing populations. People like myself, there are many more of us around over 70, and we're driving the cancer incidence. Sure, children get cancer, young people get cancer, but fortunately it's very rare. It's mainly a disease of the over 60s. Breast cancer is a little different. It starts to rise at the age of 40 in women. Prostate cancer for men obviously doesn't rise till about 70. So it's more old people, more cancer. And that comes out in this report quite well.
Seem to have a very, very poor record on dealing with cancers, don't we? I was seeing that most people now are waiting up to 62 days for treatment, and that's after they've had to wait probably weeks to get a diagnosis in the first place. How are we going to improve those figures?
I know, Angela, it's a dreadful situation. I've been banging the drum for about 40 years on this, that Britain's figures of survival are much worse than the rest of Europe. And the main reason for it is not that we oncologists are poor or we don't have the good treatments. It's simply people present too late. And if you present late compared to France or Germany, you have more advanced cancer, it's more difficult to treat, and the outcome is much poorer. Why does it present late? Because people, first of all, people, patients, they don't do something about it. European patients tend to do something. Second thing is, even if you reach the threshold of saying, that's funny, I've had a cough, I've coughed up a bit of blood, I need to do something, you can't get an appointment to see your GP. And then the other thing, the hospital system jammed, x-rays, scans, endoscopy, where you put tubes in various bits, all these things are really below capacity required. But the real problem, Angela, is that for a politician, they're not interested in what's going to happen in 15 years' time. This report is about 2040, after all. They're interested in what's going to happen when the next election comes along. And that's the whole problem with a politicised health service. It's based on the electoral cycle, which is short and doesn't allow long-term planning, which is what cancer research are calling for.
Would you want to see, because there's been, with all the crisis in the NHS at the moment, there's been talk about, you know, wouldn't it be a good idea to be cross-party and all of this? I mean, that would also help with this long-term future planning as well, wouldn't it?
It's the only way. The only sensible discussion about this that I've heard are in the all-party groups. We have these little groups and all sorts of subjects, including cancer, and it's sensible. And there's no conflict of interest because you've got Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems and so on, but you're actually trying to plan for a future, in this case 2040, and that's what we've got to do here. There's no point looking at what we can do by 2024. There's nothing you can do by 24.
And very, very, very briefly, people just have to be honest if they recognise what may be symptoms. And I look to men to this because men are much worse at dealing with their health than women, aren't they?
You're quite right, Angela. Men are really poor, especially British men, much poorer than French men, for example. Yes. They just don't go to the doctor. They often have to be dragged by their wives or partners to go to see the GP. Symptoms that persist for more than 2 weeks need sorting out. And how you do it is up to you. You can phone 111, you can go to an urgent care centre, go to your GP, but sort it out. That's the
However you do it, do it.
Yeah. Carol, really good to talk to you.
Thanks
very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. All the main stories heading our way in just a moment.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday's looking dry for the majority. Pretty mild out there this morning as well. Not a huge amount of sunshine, most places staying fairly drab. High pressure is in control, certainly across the south. We've got low pressure and these weather fronts linking back, which are bringing a lot of cloud and in places damp starts, light rain and drizzle, clearing from Northern Ireland, but still affecting parts of northwest England. And it will be another fairly damp morning for western Scotland. The rain won't be as heavy as yesterday, and it will push away to the north, so much of the west coast will become dry through the afternoon. Northwest England should also slowly turn a bit drier. Some brighter skies for Wales and southwest England. Could see some sunny spells further east as well. And it is mild temperatures this afternoon, getting up to maybe 13, perhaps 14 Celsius, where we see some sunshine. Even where it's damp in northern Scotland, temperatures are above average. The rain will continue to trickle across the Northern Isles through Friday evening. There'll be a bit of drizzle here and there around western coasts and hills, but for most places it's a dry night. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud, a few clearer spells, which may allow temperatures to drop down to 4 or 5 Celsius, but certainly for most towns and cities, we'll see the temperatures holding up at 6 or 7. So a mild start to the weekend, and for most it'll be a dry day on Saturday, certainly for England and Wales. Some drizzle around the coast and hills of Wales, and we will see some rain heading into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Initially into the northwest. By lunchtime that'll be spreading across Northern Ireland and then through central and southern Scotland during Saturday afternoon. It won't rain all day, it will move through. And western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland likely to turn a bit brighter through the afternoon. For most of England and Wales, much of the day will be dry and again mild, double figures almost across the board. But look at Sunday's temperatures, single figures. It will be turning cooler, but as well as that, we'll have light winds on Sunday and plenty of sunshine.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's been exactly 1 week since Lancashire dog walker Nicola Bulley disappeared.
A very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock here on Friday, the 3rd of February, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Angela. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the family of missing mum of two, Nicola Bulley, have said their lives have been emptied after the 45-year-old went missing in St Michael's on Wyre last Friday.
It comes after Lancashire Police released a CCTV image of a potential witness yesterday. Nicola's sister, Louise, has urged anyone with information to just come forward.
Now, from whether the Prime Minister can tackle sleaze in Westminster to your opinion on strikes and even Boris Johnson's possible return to frontline politics, we'll deliver the result of our GB News People's Poll.
More train strike misery this morning as drivers walk out for the second time this week. We're going to be live from stations across the country as operators say that the industrial action could have a knock-on effect into this weekend.
And brace yourselves for the declutter darling taking over from organisation queen Marie Kondo. We'll meet the social media star who will help you get your house in order.
Well, as ever, you can join us in any of our discussions. We've already had one about keeping the house neat and tidy, haven't we?
Oh, yes.
I've got you pegged. You can let us have your thoughts on any of the things that we're discussing by emailing us to gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, today marks 1 week since mum of two, Nicola Bulley, first went missing whilst walking her dog alongside the River Wyre in Lancashire after dropping her two daughters off at the local primary school.
Nicola's family are desperately searching for answers as the police search continues, with her two daughters, aged 6 and 9, absolutely desperate for having their mummy back.
I mean, it's a very worrying situation. As we were saying, we're talking to Graham Wetton, former Met police officer in the last hour, who was saying the problem is that there are no clear leads here.
No.
There's very little for the police to go on, apart from, at the moment, sort of research into who she was, whether this was... Because they're calling it a missing person, aren't they?
Lots of clues, if you like, but it's like a jigsaw that no one can actually put together to get the full picture, to see what actually happened.
It's a really worrying situation. But it's the police saying, if you have any information at all, if you think you just may have seen her or may have seen something suspicious in that area, just get in touch with the police. No bit of information is too small, and it could help bring some peace to that family and hopefully find Nicola Bulley safe and well somewhere.
And sometimes it is the smallest thing that means nothing to you, but that could mean a lot to the people who are looking for her. Now, we can bring you the latest results of the GB News People's Poll, where tackling sleaze, that's a big issue for us.
Yeah, now, get your head around this, though. Just 1% of voters feel completely confident in Rishi Sunak to tackle sleaze in British politics. 55% are not confident at all that he can.
While on the issue of teachers' strikes, 48% say they support the strikes and 28% oppose them. But interesting to note that 24% don't know or just prefer not to answer.
Of course, not good reading for the Conservatives, who find themselves 24 points behind Labour in the national poll. Labour going up and down a little bit, Conservatives really just staying completely flat.
Well, joining us now to give his opinion on our People's Poll and the rest of the big political stories is the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor. David, if you were still in the government, in the cabinet, and you saw the results of our People's Poll, what would your immediate reaction be?
Find another job.
Really?
Well, look...
Is that what you're saying that Rishi Sunak should do? Find another job?
Well, I mean, look, I can be frank or I can gloss it over for you. The reality is that the Rishi Sunak effect, and I, by the way, I'm a supporter of Rishi Sunak, so I think he's a bright, intelligent, decent man. But what he has failed to do is to differentiate himself from the undoubted sleaze of the Boris Johnson years and the grotesque incompetence of Boris's successor. And so what we have now is a situation where there is no bounce that the Tories have got from having Rishi Sunak. And look, I've been sitting here very glad to always be there, doing these polls for quite a lot of months now. 21 or 22% is what the Tories have been on. They just can't go on like this.
But is there a sense there's not going to be a bounce? Because what he's inherited is this dreadful situation. So all he's trying to do is, at the moment at least, is just calm the waters.
Yes, and he's not succeeding in doing that because he clutches diseased animals like Dominic Raab to his bosom. I mean, what on earth is a man with any political sense doing, embracing Raab, restoring Raab as Deputy Prime Minister? Look, I was a minister for 11 years. Now, I don't see this to boast. Any of my colleagues would have been able to tell you the same. I do not know of a single occasion when there was any complaint made by a civil servant against me, and I imagine my colleagues would say the same. Raab seems to trail a lot of angry, upset people who feel that he does not respect them. And, the extraordinary thing is...
You've got to be tough in that job, though, haven't you?
Huh?
You've got to be tough.
Yeah, but you've got to be tough and effective. Look, I was a protege of the late William Whitelaw, a Military Cross, strong, firm gentleman, and he was Deputy Prime Minister, made himself indispensable to Margaret Thatcher. Everyone needs a Willie, she said, and of course there's nothing wrong with that. But essentially, Willie Whitelaw was a gentleman, but my God, if you got on the wrong side of Willie, he would bark your head off, But Willie Whitelaw was a man of distinction. there's no distinction to Rob. He'd done nothing before he was made Deputy Prime Minister. He's then made Foreign Secretary. He then goes on holiday and apparently is very reluctant to come back to continue the job of Foreign Secretary. What's going on here?
Are you actually saying that you believe Rishi Sunak should now put him on the equivalent of gardening leave, just suspend him while this inquiry is dragging on, it has to be said? It has been months, hasn't it?
Sunak should never have appointed him. Having appointed him, he should acknowledge it's a mistake. And, you know, I'm sure there are lots of good things Rob could do, and plenty of beaches in the Eastern Mediterranean that he could decorate with great distinction. Apparently, he's a very fit chap. He does all manner of physical jerks, and I'm sure it will be a great pleasure to the various ladies of the Eastern Mediterranean if he disports himself around in his bathing
David,
trunks.
you're being very naughty.
Very naughty.
Well, you know, look, do you know what? How frustrating is it for me to have served in a government where, you know, whatever you thought of Margaret Thatcher, she was competent and effective. And to see this shambles, I mean, I'm depressed about it. But I could say something different so the viewers would think he's really a good fellow and thinks the world of the Conservatives. But I became a member of the Conservative Party. This is pathetic, but I did when I was 15. I now wonder what the hell I was doing.
So which party would you join then?
Oh, I wouldn't join any party. I think, I'm fed up with party games anyway. But the point I'm making is, when I was a teenager, this is sad, I believed in what the Conservatives were trying to do. I look at the present setup, and I don't believe in what they're trying to do because they are not effective in delivering what they're trying to do, whatever that might be.
See, it seems very damaging. We're going on this top line of only 1% think Rishi Sunak can sort out sleaze. But it's almost an impossible task, isn't it? And I say this reluctantly, David. I've obviously got to know you quite well over the last few months. But you are a man who made some headlines yourself.
Yes, I did. But you see, what we need to bear in mind is that those were the days when normal sexual relationships between consenting adults who were not married was sleaze. Now, I mean, millions of people on that basis are guilty of sleaze, and it was very unfair. You could have your phone tapped, and then they can put it in the papers on the basis they're somehow protecting the public. What I believe is sleaze is some of the stuff that was going on during lockdown, when friends of ministers were actually getting a fast track to get contracts to supply
on that
equipment
basis,
of one kind or another.
It's Nadeem Zahawi sleaze, because he's done something wrong that he's had to pay a fine for to HMRC. But I mean, he was got rid of. He was sacked because he broke the ministerial code by not revealing that he was under investigation. That's not sleaze.
Oh, yes, it definitely is. Look, let me just be quite clear. I actually am very fond of Nadeem. He's been a very good friend of mine for more than 30 years. But if you put me on the spot, I don't see how he could fail to disclose that he had issues with the revenue. It doesn't... Look, it's not like he's had a job and then he's moved on to another job. He built up a very successful business. There's always going to be people at the revenue and his own advisors who will say, no, you shouldn't have to pay for this. No, you shouldn't have to do that. It's a legitimate argument. But what everyone should have been clear about was that he acknowledged that there was a disputation going on. It doesn't mean he has been sleazy, but a failure to reveal that is on the edge of sleaze, I think, because you can't have people who become ministers with stuff rattling around in their back cupboard that shouldn't be there.
OK.
David.
Fair point.
Thank you very much indeed.
How am I doing?
You're doing very well.
Yes,
I feel a bit awful putting you on the spot, David.
No, but that's fine. Look, nobody's ever bothered about that before. But I also
I'm a nice person.
You are a very nice person. You should go into politics. If anything would stop you being nice, it would be politics.
But David, that raises the question, why would anyone want to be a politician?
That's the point.
Why would you do it?
In fact, I tell you very quickly, I went out to a school and spoke to a lot of them at Harrow, as it happened, and was speaking to them about it and saying, When I was a teenager, people thought politics was a pretty respectable thing to go into. How many of you want to go into politics? A few said they might. But when you remember that's the school of Winston Churchill, it's still a bit depressing.
Oh, I'm sorry we've depressed you this morning, but anyway,
Never mind, I'll
thank you
go
for
and have a
joining
cry
us.
and enjoy my bacon butty, which is the only reason I come here. You know?
Quite right, we look after you.
Thank you, David.
David, thank you.
What's the time? It's 12 minutes past 8, isn't it? Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
Well, British Gas is under pressure as it faces criticism to compensate vulnerable customers following reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing the prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. Ofgem has called for action, not warm words. The regulator announced yesterday it was launching an investigation and have asked suppliers to review the use of court warrants used to enter customers' homes.
New figures show the number of people in the UK diagnosed with cancer is going to rise by a third by 2040. Analysis from Cancer Research find that if current trends continue, cancer cases are going to rise from the 384,000 cases per year now to 506,000 in 2040.
And you may have noticed this already, the average price for motor insurance has increased by 8% towards the end of last year. Associated British Insurers says a typical premium is about £470 to £500. They say it's due to the rise in the cost of paint and the jump in energy prices.
Among other things. Who knew that a pot of paint was going to be expensive?
You do wonder, don't you? Mind you, I had a car once where they told me, it was one of those, you see the cars where they've got a matte finish?
Yes.
And it was one of these things. I ended up with this car for a little while. And the garage said, don't ever damage the paintwork because that paint job costs £20,000.
How much was the car?
It was an expensive car.
Oh, right.
But, I mean, it wasn't mine. I was just borrowing it. So they just said, don't mess up the paint because it's £20,000.
Did you send it back in a pristine condition?
I did, yes. I did. I couldn't get rid of it quick enough because I messed it up. There you go. Now, if you're thinking of getting on the train today, think again, because train passengers are facing another day of travel chaos, a driver's strike for the second time this week, so most services across England will be cancelled.
Drivers who are working under ASLEF and the RMT unions are walking out, as we know, over an unsettled dispute concerning pay, job security and working practices.
And operators say strike action may also affect services on Saturday. So, is there any end in sight?
Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, joins us now from Euston Station. Paul, I know it's early, but tell us, what is planned, if anything, for today?
In terms of trains from Euston, Angela, no trains whatsoever. In fact, 80% of trains won't be running across Great Britain. There will be a knock-on effect for Scotland and Wales. Northern Ireland unaffected as always. This is the 8th day of strike action by ASLEF, who represent the majority of train drivers. We're looking at least a month's worth of industrial action on the rail network in total when you add in the action from the RMT. They've got about 200 train drivers who are striking today, and frankly, while we think that the settlement might be possible, the RMT are consulting on their deal with Network Rail and the Rail Delivery Group, and they'll come back to rail employers next week. ASLEF are really unhappy with the deal that's on the table at the moment. It was offered by the Rail Delivery Group, which represents rail operators, last month. 4% backdated pay for last year, 4% for this year as well. But Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of ASLEF, saying that it is completely unacceptable, that in effect they're offering a real terms pay cut with unacceptable conditions attached, such as changes to Sunday working. There may be more strike dates announced, but for the moment, today is the last day of strike action for now, although you would have to think that certainly the mood music that's coming from the union, so far from ASLEF, certainly leads you to believe that there may be more strike dates to be announced from them. But in terms of RMT and Network Rail and the Rail Delivery Group, we think there could be a breakthrough next week, but we await to find out more.
OK, Paul, thanks very much indeed. Well, from one major hub to another, let's go to our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, who's at Birmingham New Street. Jack, morning to you. What's happening there?
Well, a similar situation to Paul down in Euston. There are absolutely no trains running from Birmingham New Street today outside of London. It's one of the country's busiest stations, but for passengers, they're not going to be able to get any services here today. And of course, that disruption is going to continue into tomorrow and Saturday morning. Of course, Avanti West Coast being one of those train services, they operate the main West Coast main line from Birmingham New Street here. And in terms of, as Paul's saying, where this kind of ends, deals seem to be close, but we don't really know where the wiggle room is, because of course Network Rail for a long time have said that backdated pay rise of 5% for 2022 and 4% for 2023 it was their final offer. And of course we know how much of the deal is going to also come down to working conditions and working practices as well. But the rail industry know that they have to adjust after the pandemic. They have to try and save money. They're under pressure to do that. Network Rail is planning to cut 1,900 jobs as part of changes to its maintenance teams and how they work, although it says most of this, and insists most of this, could be achieved through voluntary redundancy. But the RMT disagrees with that and says some of the changes disagrees with some of the changes and wants a guarantee of no compulsory job losses. But we know it also comes down to things like losing the guards off trains and making sure the RMT pushing to make sure trains are safe, both for passengers and of course their staff as well. For ASLEF, of course, Mick Whelan, the General Secretary, saying that the proposal that they've got was just unacceptable, but they're willing to engage in further discussions. We're going to have to see where that leads both the government, the rail delivery group and of course the unions. But for passengers here, one person actually walked by me this morning and I asked them, I asked them what's the disruption been like for you, and they just said, well, we're used to it now. There's been so much industrial action that people, when they hear a train strike, have already made those alternative arrangements before. They'll just make those alternative arrangements again. Of course, for a big city like Birmingham, lots of them using the public transport with buses and the tram networks as well this morning to get into work. But of course, one of the main things is how this disruption is going to lead for people trying to get home or get anywhere else on Saturday as this industrial action stops, for however much longer.
Thank you.
And we're getting reaction from you at home. Philip is saying people and businesses have found ways of working around the rail strikes, which was the point Jack was making there. This may work so well that they actually stop using the trains, which is not what we want to happen, is it? Because that's going to put them into even further decline.
But you can see that line of thought, can't you?
Yeah.
If you've got a view, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
More to come, including all the latest sports stories ahead of a packed weekend, alongside Aidan McGee.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already depressed.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 23.5 minutes past 8 o'clock, if you want to be precise about it. Welcome to today's programme. If tidy cupboards and neat rows spark joy within you, don't go away anywhere, because we're going to be meeting the decluttering darling who shares her top tips to keeping your home shipshape.
Oh, look at those cupboards.
Look at that's what mine look like.
Oh, you see them. Now, as England prepare to take on Scotland tomorrow in the Six Nations, we're going to be talking to England international James Haskell about how the cost of living crisis could threaten the future of grassroots sport.
And coming up at 10 a.m. on GB News, Esther and Phil are going to welcome former House of Commons Speaker John Bercow, as well as former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, on their show for what is sure to be a very feisty debate on Brexit, as this week marked 3 years since the UK officially left the EU. It definitely isn't going to be one to miss. Put your earplugs in too, because I think it'll get noisy.
It could get very interesting. Get in touch all the usual ways, of course. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, should we have some sport? Because Aidan McGee is the man from Del Monte this morning. He's going to say yes to any question I ask. Good morning to you.
Morning, how you doing? Okay.
Yeah, all right. What have we got?
Well, we saw yesterday Mason Greenwood, the Manchester United youngster, quite a distressing story this, but charges of attempted rape and assault have been dropped against the young Manchester United player. And now it's what happens next, really, because he's not gone to trial. As I say, the charges have been dropped, but does he just get reintegrated back into the squad? Is it that simple? Yes, we can say we agree with, or we believe in rehabilitation. That's what prison is meant to do, even though he didn't even go there in the end.
Well, no, he's not been convicted of
anything. But we have had players who've actually served time in prison and managed to go back and resume their careers relatively comfortably in some cases. So, but for United, there's more to consider than that. It's not uncommon, for example, for a football club to gauge the opinion of how a decision of theirs, so any decision they make in respect of Greenwood, how it will play out in the media. They might do that through their PR arm. They might do that through ringing up a newspaper editor or something like that and finding out how it's going to go down. There's also the issue of the dressing room as well. Will the players accept a player back? It's not taken as read. We've not heard from any players yet. None of them have commented as of yesterday. It's all quite new, of course. Then there's the footballing decision. Erik ten Hag didn't work with him. So maybe he doesn't feel the loyalty to him that he perhaps might feel to somebody he's worked with for 2 or 3 years. The team are doing well. And then, of course, there's the thorny issue of commercial relationships. I mean,
They'd have to pay him off, though, wouldn't they? He's not been convicted of any crime.
No, that's quite right. That's quite right. He's contracted until 2025, so it'll be a hefty wage. He's considered still... He's not played since January the 22nd last year, so over a year now. He's considered probably still the most talented young player. If you dispense with a player like that, not only are you having to pay out the wages, but you're also letting go of a valuable asset, somebody who could be worth 40, 50 million pounds, probably a little bit less than that at the moment, but another good season under his belt. He could easily shoot up to... We've seen the crazy prices that have been attractive for players in January. But if you look at United's commercial department, commercial partners, Adidas make the kit, TeamViewer sponsor the shirt, Betfred, Cadbury's. You're talking about some big players here, and I think they'll all have to be consulted. I really do.
In our paper review we had earlier today, a note that apparently the fans are questioning whether or not he should be allowed to play for the team, and that is going to be an important factor in any decision, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, Manchester United are apart from pretty much any other club. Stephen and I have discussed many times. He comes from the north of England. He knows how big Manchester United are. You don't have to be a big football fan to know that Manchester United is a juggernaut commercially and in terms of their fan appeal. They've got fans in the hundreds of millions, their database. So they need to gauge the reaction from fans. The traditional way of doing it is to throw the player out on the pitch and see how the crowd respond. I don't think they can. That option is particularly open to them this time. But as I say, players have been reintegrated previously, having gone to trial, having gone to prison. I believe if we believe that a young man can be rehabilitated, then there has to be a way back in some form. That's just my view. Whether United see it like that, I'm not so sure.
Oh, well, we shall see. What's happening with the Six Nations?
Well, we had Steve Borthwick taking over England. He took over, he got the job, 6-7 weeks ago before Christmas. He named his first squad for the Six Nations for his first game tomorrow. They take on Scotland. Scotland will be in good mood for that one because they've won the last 2 matches against England, one of them at Twickenham, one of them in Edinburgh, sorry, can't remember the name of the state. Murrayfield, of course.
Murrayfield.
Yeah. That's right. Tomorrow they face off at Twickenham in the 4:30 game. I always think sometimes when a coach names his first squad, he feels under pressure to make a statement inclusion or a statement omission. I think back to when Steve McLaren got the England job in 2006. The first thing he did was tell his old friend David Beckham that he wasn't going to be part of the squad anymore. He was the captain. And it looks like the same things happened yesterday to some degree. Manu Tuilagi has been left out. He's somebody who's been a mainstay of the Eddie Jones era over the last 10 years or so. He's brought in Owen Haskell-Collins, who has been in sizzling form for London Irish. He's kept that axis in the midfield of Owen Farrell, the captain, and Marcus Smith. Marcus Smith wasn't always trusted under Eddie Jones, but I suppose the footballing decision is based on the fact that 2022 was a wretched year for England rugby. They won 3 matches out of 9. They didn't get anywhere close to the Six Nations this time last year. They've got a real job on their hands getting England ready for the World Cup. I'm not saying this is an audition for the World Cup, but it does give you an idea of how things might play out later. And I'd say France at the moment are well out in front. But I do think that sometimes coaches are under pressure to make a little bit of a statement decision on their first day. He's done that very much with Tuilagi. We'll see how it plays out tomorrow.
Yeah. It's going to be a cracking game, though, isn't it? Because it's the Calcutta Cup, and of course Scotland are the current holders.
Yeah, they've won the last 2.
The new manager has got so much to prove, hasn't he, when he puts that England team?
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of there haven't been wholesale changes. They're the only 2 that I can really think of, and I think that kind of reflects the fact that there's not a great deal wrong with England. I think sometimes in any sport, when players have been hearing the same voice for so many years, and Eddie Jones was a successful England coach. He got to the World Cup final, don't forget, back in 2019. I think sometimes the players want to hear a different voice, but maybe that doesn't mean you, to coin a phrase, throw the baby out with the bathwater. It was a pretty difficult squad to get into when Eddie Jones was in charge. He liked his familiar players that he trusted, but I just think sometimes a change is as good as a rest. And we'll see tomorrow if that bears out, because I think we'll get a good idea tomorrow whether England are going to be revitalised.
Great match.
Just very quickly, I thought Gareth Bale had retired.
He has, the golf issue. So he's in a strong position after round 1 of his PGA Tour debut at Pebble Beach. Now, I'm amazed that more players haven't gone into golf. There was one gentleman in the 90s who played for QPR called Roy Wegley, who made the cut at one of the majors, thinking about 2001, didn't follow it on from there. He's a golf fanatic. There was even an issue in Qatar at the World Cup that Wales's training base wasn't stationed close enough to the nearest golf course, so he wasn't able to play golf, get some practice. But it hasn't stopped him getting practice in. It looks like he's made some good progress alongside his partner, Joseph Bramlett. But if he goes into that as a career, yes, it's a surprise, given that we all know him as a footballer, but footballers play a lot of golf. They're almost at elite level as it is. I'm amazed we haven't seen more people or more players treading that path.
Well, there you go. Lovely stuff, Aidan. Thank you.
James Haskell later on, don't forget.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we have James Haskell, 9:20. That should be fun.
Looking forward to that.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Look forward to it.
More to come, including all the news and views making the headlines in today's papers, with Leo Kearse and Emma Burnell.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela.
Time for the papers this morning. We'll start with the Times, should we? It has its investigation into British Gas, who, through an intermediary, broke into vulnerable people's homes to force-fit prepayment meters.
The Guardian leads with Shell's profit announcement, which the TUC union has called obscene.
The Express says the Bank of England's forecast on the UK economy is looking optimistic.
While the Daily Mail leads with the disappearance of Nicola Bulley, the Lancashire one. In Lancashire, it's 1 week on since she disappeared.
Yeah, it is. OK, let's go through the papers then with journalist and playwright Emma Burnell and comedian Leo Kearse. Good to see you both. Leo, let's start with the Times. Should we be looking at Dominic Raab?
That's right, yeah. So the bullying accusations against Dominic Raab are still rumbling on. There have been dozens of official complaints made, and now people are saying that Rishi Sunak would have known, he was informed in writing about these bullying accusations before he reappointed Dominic Raab as Justice Secretary. I just can't believe that adults are complaining about bullying. You know what I mean? Imagine being over the age of 7 and running to teacher saying that somebody had given you, a dead arm or whatever they're doing. I mean, I have seen some of the things. Apparently threw tomatoes. Somebody gave him a salad with tomatoes in it, and he threw the tomatoes at them. This is very sort of Naomi Campbell, type behaviour. Very prima donna-ish.
I don't know if I'd call it bullying.
Yeah, that's just assault with a tomato.
That's all.
Yeah, but there have been other things. We saw the text messages that he sent to someone. I mean, he does sound like a piece of work, but I mean, he's got a very stressful position. I think people at the highest offices of the land should be allowed to vent a little bit, and they need to throw their weight around to get things done. In fact, maybe we need more of it.
You sound as if you think that perhaps too many of the people with whom he works are snowflekes.
They are total snowflakes, just melting under the weight of a couple of tomatoes being thrown at their face.
I think it's a bit more serious than that, but I get your point.
Emma.
I mean, the thing is, I've worked for good bosses and I've worked for bad bosses, and I know which got more out of me. So as a taxpayer, I want this to be a productive work environment, and it doesn't sound like this one. If your boss is a word I won't use at this time in the morning, then you go on go slow. Everyone knows that. You give as much as you have to. I have bosses who I've wanted to impress. I give a lot more. So it's actually just whether you want to call it bullying or bad behaviour, whatever. A, there are questions about what Rishi Sunak knew and when, because if there was a complaints thing already in process, and he said that he didn't know about it. Rishi Sunak seems to be the world's most oblivious Prime Minister. Doesn't seem to know about anything. But also, frankly, Dominic Raab is not doing his job well. As a taxpayer, I want someone you get more flies with honey than vinegar. Do your job better. Don't make your staff feel like that and therefore feel like they're not going to do their best.
I disagree. I think people work harder when you crack the whip. That's why I was up at 4 a.m. this morning.
Well, no,
I was up because these two are so lovely.
I believe Leo more than you on that one. Let's have a look at the Mail, Emma, should we? They've taken a prisoner in Plymouth.
They have. It's a very, very serious crime story. A spree, in fact, a swan spree. There is a wonderful picture in the Mail of a swan in the back of a squad car.
Did they read its rights, I wonder, before they put it in?
Isn't that fabulous? It's been captured, taken prisoner, taken to the vets against its will. They've said there it's like Hot Fuzz, which is a wonderful, wonderful film. It's the most West Country story we could possibly have come up with. Don't they also... am I right in thinking that one of the nicknames for the police is the Beak? So maybe he's just confused about which side of the police car he should be in.
Oh, bless. What had he done wrong, then?
Well, I think he was just roaming the streets and clearly...
He's lost.
I mean, I think, to be fair, I think the police are doing a good bit of community service
and so
here.
they took him to the vets.
They took him to the vets and made sure that he was going to be all right.
And swans are notoriously violent. I mean, I remember as a kid being told that swans will break your arm.
Yeah.
I never met anybody who had their arm broken by a swan.
My grandpa...
No.
Really? I know this show's been a bit about my grandpa this morning, but he genuinely had his arm broken by a swan.
What was he doing to the swan?
Well, I haven't asked that question. Now I never can, unfortunately.
Well, Plymouth is my hometown, so it's quite nice for it to get a mention today, isn't it, actually? Leo, now... You've got a really bonkers story here.
Yeah.
A father who lost custody of his young daughter after leaving an Alexa to babysit while he went on a pub crawl with his new girlfriend.
Yeah.
What was the Alexa supposed to do? I mean, when the baby went, yeah, was it supposed to say, calm down, darling? I mean, what was the point?
So this is an Alexa with a camera in it, so he could keep an eye on his 5-year-old daughter. Although he couldn't actually do anything. Maybe he could talk, but yeah, obviously. Well, some people are saying he's a terrible parent. I think he's a visionary. He's harnessed technology. He's the Steve Jobs of child rearing. This is he's obviously a terrible man. I know,
come on, Leo, you're having us on.
To compound the awfulness, he was actually. This was only found out because he got caught strangling his girlfriend in the garden after the drinking session. So yeah, not a great guy.
Probably should have switched the Alexa off.
This is a terrible story.
He should be in the police car next to that swan, to be honest.
Yeah. With the swan.
Yeah.
He can break his arm.
No. He might try to strangle the swan.
It's got a lot of neck to grip onto.
Stop it.
Well, I don't know if this gentleman has been charged with anything or not.
He's got a 2-year suspended sentence.
Oh, so he has been convicted.
Yes,
yeah, but not very much. I mean, a suspended sentence isn't.
Oh, I do.
Well,
no. Oh, come on! If you've got children, you cannot leave them with a bit of IT in the house. You can't. You've got to be there for them, because if something terrible happens, you've got to be on the spot to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And also, you know, children don't want to talk to a machine. They want to talk to a human being. Oh, no, I'm not in favour of this.
I quite happily...
You don't want to talk to anybody this morning. Not your neighbours, not your kids.
I quite happily talk to my Alexa. It's very good.
But you haven't got a baby that you've left with it.
No, the cat.
You've got the cat.
No, the cat.
Well, the cat. Maybe the cat has conversations with it when you're not there.
If you meow at it, it meows back.
Does it? Oh, crikey.
The Alexa. Yeah. You can do that, yeah. Anyway, moving on. What's Stonehenge of the North, Emma?
Yeah, so there's this incredible historic site of 3 henges outside of Ripon in North Yorkshire.
There you go.
And it's been saved to the nation. So there's been a deal struck between, I think it's Historic England and Tarmac. To make, who I think own the site, and they've now gifted it to the nation.
They're not going to pay.
And it will now be open to the general public to go and visit. And this is a huge part of our ancient history. This is sort of druidical, real kind of old Britain. I love this period. I've just finished reading the last in a series of novels, all based around a henge that was from a long time ago.
So it's all wonderful. Were they?
No.
Thank heavens.
He did write books, but no.
Oh, here we go.
It's not quite as good as Stonehenge, is it?
It's not. But
Stonehenge has got the stones, not just the henge.
But we don't know what's under, because obviously if these are 2,000 years old, they will be buried. So there could well be a henge underneath it.
Tarmac have got some bulldozers.
Yeah.
You are savages. You don't do that.
That's not how you do archaeology.
But they've opened it to the public now.
They have,
but they're going to have to be very careful, because henges, as you say, they haven't got any stones. It's soil, and it's soil banks when you've got a henge. So you're going to have to be very, very careful with it.
And
you
they probably
people,
will have people going in at certain times and doing some proper, depth analysis and seeing what's underneath, because this is all such an important part of learning about our history, and it's great that it's open to the public to do that as well.
Yeah. No, I agree.
No, Tarmac are not going to tarmac over it. Definitely not. Leo, Netflix. This story's been around for a while, but they're sort of galvanising what they're going to do now, aren't they?
That's right. So Netflix for a while have been saying they're going to crack down on people sharing passwords. Apparently 100 million households that use Netflix are sharing their password with people outside the household, including my mum, who shares her password with me. So I'm worried about this. This is going to cost me... Yeah, I'm Scottish. But yes, they've revealed how they're going to do it. I think they accidentally revealed this. They're going to go they're going to trace people's IP addresses and their device IDs, and then if people are using devices outside the home, they're going to send them warnings and then shut down their accounts. But this is a bit worrying if you travel.
It's fair enough, though.
No, what if you're in a hotel in a travel lodge somewhere and you want to log on and watch a bit of Bridgerton, and you can't because Netflix thinks you're somebody else?
But if you can do it on you do it on your mobile. As long as it's on your mobile, it won't matter.
Or on your iPad.
What if you've got exactly? What if you've got lots of devices? They're going to limit how many devices. I don't know. I mean, I think people.
Well, interestingly, I got an email from Netflix yesterday saying they were because I was wondering about this, saying they're increasing the number of devices you can watch on at the same time from 4 to 6.
Wow.
But they've all got to be in the house.
Right.
Oh, do you mean you can only watch them when you're in the house? Or
so you can't take it off to a Travelodge or whatever?
You must be able to.
I mean, you'd think so. I mean, Netflix is not cheap. I mean, to be fair, neither of the dramas they put out, those big, lavish productions, need to be paid for. But, you've got... It feels unworkable to me. Unenforceable.
Yeah.
Like, you can see how they can maybe work out that somebody's taking the mick, but... let's say someone guesses your... Because most people's password are password 1, 2, 3, 4. Mine's not, by the way. But, if someone guesses your password, how's that... How do you enforce that on the person whose password's been guessed?
Maybe they could put prepayment meters on people's tablets.
Maybe. I don't know. I just think it's... I mean...
do you know what? I would love to get inside the world of Leo, because... I'm quite interested to know what is going on inside that head after everything you've said this morning. And I do have to keep reminding myself he is a comedian.
I'll tell you what, though.
You just have to look at his shirt.
Lost for words, which is marvellous. No, I don't. I don't blame Netflix for this because it's, business model and all the rest of it. People are getting it all for basically nothing. My parents used mine.
I don't blame them for trying. I just don't know how they're going to manage it.
Yeah.
The magic they can do with an IP address. Like, you can't watch BBC iPlayer if you're in Spain, for example, because it says, no, you're not in the UK, you can't watch it.
Yeah. Oh, you've both given us so much to think about and laugh about this morning. Thank you both, Leo. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes. Right, now get out. Thank you very much indeed.
Subtle.
What do we put up with in the morning, I tell you? It is 8:47. Let's bring you up to date with the top stories today.
Rail passengers are facing travel disruption as fresh strikes by train drivers cause travel problems all over the country. RMT and ASLEF union members are walking out for the second time this week in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Rail operators are warning of disruption to services all day and little to no services in some parts of the country, including probably part of tomorrow.
Now, the Deputy Prime Minister is facing new allegations of bullying. It comes as anti-Brexit campaigner Gina Miller has accused Dominic Raab of launching an abusive attack on her. She says he was aggressive and intimidating during an encounter with her when he was made Justice Secretary. The Prime Minister is facing pressure over what he knew when Mr Raab was appointed.
The Princess of Wales and radio presenter Roman Kemp have been filming a promotional video together for the Shaping Up campaign. Catherine launched the Early Years initiative on Tuesday, and the short film is due to be released today as Kate and Kemp will discuss the importance of mental well-being, relationships and the positive effects of nurturing children early on in life. Well, this week, decluttering guru Marie Kondo said that she's now become a mother to her third child, and as a result, she's no longer on a mission to keep everything tidy. Surprise, surprise. Yes.
Just let it slip. Marie says the need to clean has become less intense, but if you're still keen to give it a go, despite being a busy professional, let's talk to Rachel Burdett, who is the declutter darling, and hopefully can share some helpful tips, because our desk is a right mess.
Yes, we decided that it would probably give you a heart attack if you could see what goes on here. But, Rachel, tell us, please, what is the difference between clutter and just having a nice, cosy atmosphere in which you and the family live together and comfortably?
I think that's it. You kind of hit the nail on the head that clutter, I think, is a personal issue. If you can deal with it and live with it, that's absolutely fine. Some people need a sterile environment that's very kind of clinical and minimal. Whereas for me, I've got 2 young children and, okay, space behind me probably looks quite clean and tidy. That's because there's no children here at the moment. But it's a personal kind of issue as to whether you can cope with clutter or not. If you've got a small family, you've just got to live with it and have a system that works for you, whether it is a clutter, but you know where everything is because you have that system.
I've got to say, your kitchen looks lovely. It looks so neat and tidy, Rachel.
No dishes in the sink.
Honestly,
there,
no, it's gorgeous. But, I mean, look, you can imagine a lot of people who live in a bit of a cluttered situation, when they do declutter, when things are organised, you do feel better for it, don't you?
I think so. I think it goes quite hand in hand with just being quite mindful and being present. So, for example, you might be sat watching TV in the living room in the evening, but you know you've got, for example, a pile of dishes cluttering your side. It's going to be there in your mind somewhere. Whereas if you've cleared it, you can be present, you can focus on doing what you want to do, not thinking about that clutter in the other room.
Rachel, I mean, I'm sure that an awful lot of people listening to this and watching will say, well, all right, what can we do? And is storage the answer to part of this problem?
I think so, but I think storage is something you do at the end of the process. So whenever I visit one of my clients' homes, I will bring storage, but I won't use all the storage. The first stop is to go through and understand what you need, what you don't need, and then utilise the storage, because you could buy storage and think, oh, I've still got 3 drawers, I'm going to shove everything in there. So it's about understanding what you want to keep and then bringing the storage in to make that system for you.
OK, look, we're going to show some pictures of a before and after. Oh, she's gone. We'll try and get her back. Let's have a look at these before and afters.
Yeah.
I think we've got to see what some of the work she's done. So that's...
Not much help to people on
the
radio.
No, well, that's just a cupboard full of
junk.
I don't know if that's before or after.
That's
all right.
before. That is definitely before. Yes, that's all cluttered up with all sorts of stuff in there. Yes. And after, what does it look like? There you go.
Oh, yes, but now, you see, my question with that is if you're listening on the radio, there was an iron and everything. That looks lovely, but where's the iron gone? Presumably it's gone in another cupboard, has it, Rachel?
It has. And I mean, a lot of my before and afters that you see, they are true life before and afters, but I've utilised other parts of the kitchen to kind of make a system. So, for example, an iron for me doesn't live with your squashes and crisps. It lives with all your other electrical appliances. So that's kind of what that system is for me, is understanding, OK, you'll have a cupboard, that's your food cupboard.
Well, I mean, some people keep things which you might call clutter because they're important to them. They have lovely memories. I think they must be very brave when, as I gather very often, people just give you the keys, leave the house and say, get on with it, and come back just to see what you've done.
Absolutely. But I'm ruthless, but to a point, I'm never someone that will be get rid of everything. It's a process, and it's understanding what you want to keep, why you want to keep it. If you've got 5 frying pans, maybe you don't need 5 frying pans. But as you said, if there are sentimental items and they mean something to you, but you might not use them every day, but you want to keep them. Absolutely.
Yeah, you've got to be brutal at times. Rachel, it's really good to see you. You're very welcome to come here and sort this out anytime you so wish.
Anytime. Love it.
Lovely. Consider yourself.
Thanks a lot, Rachel.
Rachel, thanks very much indeed. I mean, I like things to be neat and tidy.
As do I.
But not to that scale. I mean, I think that's really impressive. I love it. You were telling me your jumpers are very well organised.
Yes, they are. Yes, my jumpers are very well organised.
See?
Yes.
I love that. I think to open the cupboard and everything's
No, I like to know where everything is. Yes.
Perfect. Can't argue with that.
More to come, including the latest on missing dog walker and mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, 1 week on from her disappearance.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday's looking dry for the majority, pretty mild out there this morning as well. Not a huge amount of sunshine, most places staying fairly drab. High pressure is in control, certainly across the south. We've got low pressure and these weather fronts linking back, which are bringing a lot of cloud and in places damp starts, light rain and drizzle, clearing from Northern Ireland, but still affecting parts of northwest England. And it will be another fairly damp morning for western Scotland. The rain won't be as heavy as yesterday, and it will push away to the north, so much of the west coast will become dry through the afternoon. Northwest England should also slowly turn a bit drier. Some brighter skies for Wales and southwest England. Could see some sunny spells further east as well. And it is mild temperatures this afternoon, getting up to maybe 13, perhaps 14 Celsius, where we see some sunshine. Even where it's damp in northern Scotland, temperatures are above average. The rain will continue to trickle across the Northern Isles through Friday evening. There'll be a bit of drizzle here and there around western coasts and hills, but for most places it's a dry night. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud, a few clearer spells, which may allow temperatures to drop down to 4 or 5 Celsius, but certainly for most towns and cities we'll see the temperatures holding up at 6 or 7. So a mild start to the weekend, and for most it'll be a dry day on Saturday, certainly for England and Wales. Some drizzle around the coast and hills of Wales, and we will see some rain heading into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Initially into the northwest. By lunchtime that'll be spreading across Northern Ireland and then through central and southern Scotland during Saturday afternoon. It won't rain all day, it will move through. And western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland likely to turn a bit brighter through the afternoon. For most of England and Wales, much of the day will be dry and again mild, double figures almost across the board. But look at Sunday's temperatures, single figures. It will be turning cooler, but as well as that, we'll have light winds on Sunday and plenty of sunshine.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's been 1 week since Lancashire dog walker Nicola Bulley disappeared.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Friday the 3rd of February, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Angela. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the family of missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, have said their lives have been emptied after the 45-year-old went missing in St Michael's on Wyre a week ago today.
It comes after Lancashire Police released a CCTV image of a potential witness yesterday. Nicola's sister, Louise, has urged anyone with information to please come forward.
Now, from whether the Prime Minister can tackle sleaze in Westminster to your opinion on strikes and Boris Johnson's return to frontline politics, we'll deliver the results of our GB News People's Poll.
More train strike misery this morning as drivers walk out for a second time this week. We're going to be live from stations across the country as operators say the industrial action could have a knock-on effect this weekend.
And the Six Nations kicks off this weekend. And ahead of the Calcutta Cup, that historic clash between Scotland and England, we're going to talk to former England rugby international James Haskell.
And of course, as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us to gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So today is 1 week since mum of two, Nicola Bulley, went missing while walking her dog alongside the River Wyre in Lancashire. That came just after she dropped off her two daughters at primary school.
Nicola's family are desperately searching for answers as the police search continues, with her two daughters, aged 6 and 9, desperate for their mummy back.
Well, with police continuing the search throughout today, of course, let's head to Lancashire. Our national reporter, Theo Chikomba, is there for us. I mean, what more do we know at this stage, Theo?
Good morning. Well, it's a week on, as you've mentioned, since the disappearance of Nicola. It's shocked the community and indeed her family. Over the last few days, search and rescue teams, the police and various other agencies have been working together to try and find her. I'm at the location where she was last seen in this area walking her dog, and her phone was found here and her dog as well. In the last few days, the police were appealing for a man who they say could be a potential witness to see whether he saw anything significant to help in their investigation. He was found and they've been working with him. And yesterday afternoon, there was a CCTV image released of a woman wearing a red jacket, a white hat, and was walking with a white dog. The police late last night said that thank you to the members of the public for helping them. They did find her, and she is also working with the police. And Lancashire police do say, the force say there's nothing to suggest any third-party involvement, and adding that the woman was sought as a witness and nothing more. And this morning, I've been in the area, and some of her family friends and some of the members of the community have been out holding placards saying if anybody has any dash cam, please do contact 101. So the search continues. Members of her family have indeed been speaking this week, and they desperately want to find out some news, and the search still continues here in Lancashire.
Good to see the local people getting involved in this, but what is the feeling? I mean, you've been out and about talking to people in the community. What generally is the feeling in the community about what is going on and the police action so far? They do seem to be stumped, don't they? In spite of any of the clues that they've got, they just can't seem to work out what on earth happened here.
That's right. Some of the people I've spoken to this morning who are on the roadside holding those signs are just saying we're not going to give up until we find some answers, and they're urgently asking people if they have dash cam footage or CCTV, please do let them know. But the feeling is they're not going to give up until they find some answers for the family especially.
OK, Theo, thanks very much indeed. I mean, just looking at the sort of timeline in all of this, Angela.
I know. There's a 20-minute gap, isn't there, between when she was sighted by a fellow dog walker and the point where someone found her phone that was still connected to a team meeting that she'd been having with colleagues. No one knows what happened in that 20 minutes.
No. So the phone was discovered at 25 to 10 in the morning. At 8:57, she sent a text message arranging a play date with the kids. I mean, so it's like, but the police say they're not looking for sort of anybody else at the moment. There's nothing sort of suspicious at the moment, and treating it as missing persons.
But nothing to suggest, as you say in that message, that she was planning to just drop everything and walk away from her life.
No.
Nothing at all.
Very strange, isn't it? If you've got anything, as Angela was saying before, do get in touch with the police. Any tiny bit of information.
It's 9:05. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
Well, British Gas is under pressure as it faces criticism to compensate vulnerable customers following reports that contractors working for them had been unreasonably forcing prepayment meters on vulnerable customers. Ofgem has called for action, not warm words. The regulator announced yesterday it was launching an investigation into the matter.
New figures show the number of people in the UK diagnosed with cancer is going to rise by a third by 2040. Analysis from Cancer Research find that if current trends continue, cancer cases will rise from the 384,000 cases per year now to 506,000 in 2040.
The Princess of Wales and radio presenter Roman Kemp have been filming a promotional video for the Shaping Up campaign. Catherine launched the Early Years Initiative on Tuesday. The film is due to be released today as Catherine and Roman will be discussing the importance of mental well-being, relationships and the positive effects of nurturing children early on in life.
I think that was shaping up, meaning you take a piece of plasticine and see what you can make out of it. I think that's what it was supposed to be, wasn't it? It was all a bit esoteric, really, wasn't it?
It was a bit, but yeah, it's a good idea, and I think Roman Kemp seems like a decent fella as well, so it's all good.
Now we can bring you the latest results of the GB News People's Poll that we're tackling, and sleaze has turned out to be the big issue.
Yes, now this is one that shocked us all morning. Just 1% of voters are completely confident in Rishi Sunak being able to tackle sleaze in politics. 55% are not confident at all.
While on the issue of teachers' strikes, 48% say they support the strikes and 28% oppose them. But what is interesting is that 24% don't know or actually just prefer not to answer.
Now, it all makes pretty grim reading for the Conservatives. They're 24 points behind the Labour Party when it comes to the national poll.
Well, joining us now to make some sense of all of that, and I'm sure to have his own opinions on it, is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. It does make grim reading for the Tory party, doesn't it, Tom?
It certainly does. This is yet another piece of evidence that nothing has really changed in terms of the position of the country. The Tories bubbling along at the low 20s, the Labour Party very happy in the mid-40s. And this has been roughly the consistent picture across all the different pollsters for a very long time now. And really, this is a curious thing for the Conservative Party because they believed getting in Rishi Sunak would really turn around those fortunes. First, he'd stabilise things and then he'd galvanise things. That was the idea. And yet, all that seems to have stabilised is the Conservatives' poll rating down in the low 20s. Although it must be said that on Wednesday evening, the Conservative Parliamentary Party gathered at the Hurlingham Club for the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the 1922 Committee, which was actually founded in 1923. And at that big gathering of all of these MPs, Rishi Sunak gave a galvanising speech, sort of saying things were going to be OK for the next election. And one of the most interesting lines in that speech, as it's been reported overnight, was, "Predictions in politics are dangerous, as we're going to show people at the next election." Now, some people have noted that that in itself seems like a prediction, but also it shows that the number 10 think that predicting everything in terms of how things might roll out next year or even almost 2 years away for the next election, basing that on the polls now might not be the wisest thing.
No, can I just ask you this slightly off midfield? Because listening to the leader of the opposition, to Keir Starmer, his ratings are fairly sort of stable, aren't they? I mean, but he doesn't have particularly good ratings in the nation as a whole. But just listening to him speaking last week and the week before, do you feel that he's becoming a bit more statesmanlike in the things that he says, that he's actually sort of sharpening up his own image so that he can convince people that he would make a good leader?
So this is the fascinating thing about Keir Starmer. The success of the Labour Party doesn't come through any great enthusiasm for voting for the Labour Party. There's been some polling on this in the last few weeks. Actually, enthusiasm for both parties is much lower than it was in previous elections, particularly in the last two elections. But what the Labour Party has successfully done, even though it seemed more boring and perhaps its most core supporters are less enthused, it's become more palatable, perhaps by being less interesting. And so it seems maybe less exciting to a radical youth, but it also seems less dangerous to your median Middle England voter. And that's the path that Keir Starmer has tried to take. And obviously, being in the polls, being 20 points ahead at least in terms of where the average of the polls sits, people start talking about the Labour Party as a prospective government. And almost through that lens by which we're seeing them now, that sort of makes people change their assessment of Keir Starmer. If he were behind in the polls, no one would be thinking he looked particularly statesmanlike. But because everyone's thinking, gosh, this guy might well win an election, he looks like he's poised to win an election, were one to be held this week, then he starts to seem almost by default more statesmanlike.
Interesting.
Interesting, Tom.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, let's turn our attention to dog breeder Margaret Peacock. She's due to be sentenced today after one of her dogs mauled a visitor, causing her significant blood loss.
Margaret, who is a lifelong breeder, was convicted by a jury in December of failing to control her dog and has been out on bail ever since, awaiting today's outcome.
Well, let's get more from our South East of England reporter, Ray Addison, who's at Salisbury Crown Court this morning. What's the timeline here, Ray?
Yes, good morning to you both. As you were saying, this is the case of the 69-year-old Margaret Peacock, who was a Crufts award-winning dog breeder. And back in February of 2021, she had a visitor to her home, 33-year-old Natasha Turner, who'd come to help her move a piece of furniture. Now, Miss Turner was on the phone when she felt a nip on the back of her leg, and she realised that Peacock's Belgian Malinois had escaped and was attacking her. Now, Belgian Malinois is the type of dog that's used by the UK military. It's also used by special forces in the United States as well. It's described as stealthy and fierce and muscular. Now, the dog attacked her left leg and gripped on and was biting her, causing her to scream out in agony. Peacock came to her defence, attempted to disengage the dog and failed. She grabbed a screwdriver at one point as well to attempt to persuade the dog to loosen its grip. That failed, and she was bitten by Mako as well. Eventually, they disengaged the dog from Natasha. Now, after that, there was considerable blood loss, considerable damage. Natasha described it as feeling like a knife was being drawn through her leg, and Peacock tried to persuade her not to tell the police. Natasha went to receive to the hospital. She needed plastic surgery at the time, and eventually did involve the police, and Peacock was charged with not being in control of her dog. Now, during the trial, Peacock's defence was that Miss Turner had turned up on her doorstep with the injury already in place. She claimed that she said she'd been attacked by a stray dog in the woods. Now, the jury obviously was not convinced by that. They did find her guilty. And during the summing up at the end of that period, the judge allowed Peacock to go out on bail, awaiting sentencing, and said that do not allow the fact that I'm allowing you to be on bail dissuade you that there may not be a sentence here, a prison sentence for you. And sentencing will take place just after 11 a.m. this morning.
Grim story, Ray. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us up with the details of it.
Yes.
I spent the day yesterday with lovely dogs who are assistance dogs. And we've had so many stories about, like the one we've just heard, with dogs attacking people. I think we just have to remember there is another side to dogs, and that on the whole, that they are not vicious all the time.
No, but we just need to be aware.
We just need to be aware, yeah.
Now, don't go anywhere, because coming up, we're going to be chatting to former England international James Haskell ahead of the start of the Six Nations.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 18 minutes past 9. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela.
Well, tomorrow, the legendary Six Nations tournament starts off with a bang. That's rugby, of course, as Wales face Ireland, while England take on long-time rival Scotland.
Yeah, but believe it or not, tie all this in with the cost of living crisis, and it could be a problem for the future of grassroots sports and could potentially put the future of British rugby and other sports at risk. Let's talk to former England international James Haskell, who joins us now. James, really good to see you this morning. Look, what is the concern here when it comes to grassroots sports and grassroots rugby in particular?
Well, first of all, it's nice that you said it's nice to see me. No one ever says that, so I appreciate that. Not if my wife's that keen to see me in the morning. But, yeah, I'm in a frosty Twickenham station, and we're here with Green King. We're handing out between 11 and 12, making sure that's very clear, is that apparently is the suitable hour for handing out alcohol to people. It's because every 10p of every pint sold goes to grassroots sports clubs, because there is a dire need to help grassroots sports clubs at the moment. I think during COVID, across all sectors of sport and in life in general, people lost opportunities to take part, the financial impact. Clubs just don't have enough money to buy new training kit, new boots. Numbers have dwindled as people haven't returned. So yeah, it's a bit of an issue really. And obviously, Green King are trying their best to kind of go back and help grassroots sports clubs as best they can. And I think it's really important. That a strong grassroots sports game in the UK, especially for rugby, is essential. And recently, with the change of the tackle laws, you saw the outcry and the power that these people have, and the amount of care that they have to what they do.
Well, I mean, grassroots is really important when it comes to any kind of sport, really, because that's where young talent is nurtured and then recognised and discovered, as it was very much in your case, I think. So, I mean, how are we going to turn that around to get not just the company that you're representing, but other people also to put more money into sports and to grassroots sports? I was looking the other day at the amount of money that football clubs, for instance, are spending on football players, which I personally find obscene, that kind of money. Why can't they put some of that into grassroots?
Look, I think if you look at the wider political scale, everyone's always just trying to find a magic amount of money to fix everything. You know, Rishi Sunak was interviewed yesterday, and it's a case of, moving one bit of money from somewhere to somewhere. Unfortunately, there isn't a magic pool of money to help people. I think grassroots rugby survives by volunteers, by people attending, by new forms of the game, by charity events, by donors, by companies like I'm working for today, helping and putting money in there to try to support the game. Look, there isn't a miracle answer, unfortunately, but I think one thing this country desperately needs is children playing sport across the board. We've got one of the biggest obesity epidemics in the whole of Europe. A lot of school kids don't play sport anymore. Sport teaches you a lot of values, especially rugby. It teaches you to play for something bigger than yourself. It teaches you discipline. It obviously exercises you. It's good for your mental health. And unfortunately, at the moment, those numbers are dwindling across the board, all over the place. And look, football. The reason football has so much money, it's a global game. The TV rights alone are in hundreds of millions. So look, you can never compare like for like. I think with rugby, there is always an important amount of people who play, but we just need to get people to come down to their local rugby clubs, go down and support them, and support basically anyone in your community. Whether that's a pub, whether that's a business, go out there, spend local, look after yourselves, and make sure you take part.
Well, I mean, in a sense, I wonder where does the money go? In that, isn't a lot of this down to A, schools, and B, the volunteer groups, the dads organising little rugby matches and what have you? Isn't a lot of this sort of, in effect, free?
Yeah, look, I think so. The number one thing for me, if I was put in charge of the country, God forbid, for one day, is that I would make sport compulsory for kids to play at schools. I'd have them in schools longer. I wouldn't have sold off all the training fields. I would have given kids the options to play football, tennis, sport, whatever exercise they want to do. I'd get them off their screens. I'd get them off their phones. I'd get them playing. I think for me, especially with rugby, a lot of it is kind of Sunday mornings at local rugby clubs, dads volunteering, and I think what's happened is that is diminished because of COVID, because people have, bigger fish to fry, bigger concerns. So I think for me, it's really important that, we get people to volunteer as much as we can.
I mean, yes, I think it's absolutely terrific because apart from anything else, youngsters learn to play as part of a team, which is important. Now, we can't let you go without some reference to the game tomorrow. As a former England player, England playing Scotland in the Six Nations for the Calcutta Cup. It's going to be an interesting game, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's massive. This Six Nations, I think, is going to be the most exciting. And the good thing is, at the top of the game, the Six Nations is the premier tournament in the world at the moment. We've lost 4 out of the last 5 games to Scotland. We're back at home. We've got a new coach, Steve Borthwick, incredibly talented coach, a great new set of players. Some old faces have returned, some new faces are in there. And look, we've also got Ireland going to Wales. Ireland are probably favourites for the tournament, along with France. They haven't won in Wales in 10 years. So look, it's so much to play for. Whether you have an opportunity to go to the stadium, please go. If you've got an opportunity to go to Green King Pub and enjoy a pint, do that as well.
James Haskell, thank you. You can tell your father-in-law you've been on a proper TV channel now. Really good to see you.
I will do, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
We'll be back tomorrow. That's it from us for today, though. You have a good day. Bye-bye now.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday's looking dry for the majority, pretty mild out there this morning as well. Not a huge amount of sunshine, most places staying fairly drab. High pressure is in control, certainly across the south. We've got low pressure and these weather fronts linking back, which are bringing a lot of cloud and in places damp starts, light rain and drizzle, clearing from Northern Ireland, but still affecting parts of northwest England. And it will be another fairly damp morning for western Scotland. The rain won't be as heavy as yesterday, and it will push away to the north, so much of the west coast will become dry through the afternoon. Northwest England should also slowly turn a bit drier. Some brighter skies for Wales and southwest England. Could see some sunny spells further east as well. And it is mild temperatures this afternoon, getting up to maybe 13, perhaps 14 Celsius, where we see some sunshine. Even where it's damp in northern Scotland, temperatures are above average. The rain will continue to trickle across the Northern Isles through Friday evening. There'll be a bit of drizzle here and there around western coasts and hills, but for most places it's a dry night. There'll be a few breaks in the cloud, a few clearer spells, which may allow temperatures to drop down to 4 or 5 Celsius, but certainly for most towns and cities, we'll see the temperatures holding up at 6 or 7. So a mild start to the weekend, and for most it'll be a dry day on Saturday, certainly for England and Wales. Some drizzle around the coast and hills of Wales, and we will see some rain heading into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Initially into the northwest. By lunchtime, that'll be spreading across Northern Ireland and then through central and southern Scotland during Saturday afternoon. It won't rain all day, it will move through. And western parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland, likely to turn a bit brighter through the afternoon. For most of England and Wales, much of the day will be dry and again mild, double figures almost across the board. But look at Sunday's temperatures, single figures. It will be turning cooler, but as well as that, we'll have light winds on Sunday and plenty of sunshine.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,